Before we start, every time I've gone live with another movie talker or just have good communication with them, I add them to the talk to me hand.
Okay, hell yeah.
Do you want to be added?
Absolutely. Dude, I actually have the same one.
Do you really?
Yeah, yeah. I'll add you. That's
Right on.
awesome. Welcome back to Once Upon a Movie, where we go beyond the screen, delving into the profound connections between movies and life. Today is a very, very intense episode, and that's why I picked Sinister Tims from TikTok, because he is the right man for the job for this one. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing, my man?
Thanks for having me, man. I'm doing really good. Super excited.
And I don't know, guys, if you can already see the background. You got some doozies. You got Salo. You have the Sadness, the Talk to Me hand, House of a Thousand Corpses, the Blair Witch on VHS.
Mhm.
You got Frontiers over there from
Oh yeah.
Second Sight, the Terrifier shirt. I mean, there's a lot to take in just off the background alone.
Oh yeah.
So if you are somebody who has not necessarily experienced extreme horror, we are going to be talking heavily about subject matter that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. This is the kind of talk that does separate your casual horror fans to the more extreme side of things. So if that is not something you want to hear, please skip this episode. We are going to start lighter. We're going to get to know more about Sinister's upbringings in horror and kind of find out how he evolved into the more extreme stuff.
I put Sallow up here for you.
Yeah. I fucking hate that movie with a passion.
Yeah.
One and done for me, my man. It's so funny because, I mean, we'll get into it, but the movie did exactly what it's supposed to do. Like, I think it's supposed to evoke that emotion, right? Unless you have some type of fetish where it turns you on, and that's a whole other fucking conversation.
Hmm.
I think it's supposed to kind of revolt and make you go,
Oh yeah.
you know?
When you finish it, it's not supposed to be like, okay.
Yeah. You don't
You're
like,
supposed
oh,
to
you want to go
finish it,
get
be like,
food?
I shouldn't have watched what I watched.
Yeah. Let's go to Applebee's, guys. I can't come around to owning it. I own other movies that are equally as extreme, or if not more. I don't understand myself sometimes.
I get that. It took me like 3 years after watching it to finally own it to my collection
Yeah.
because I'm such a completionist. I remember putting it on my shelf and I was like, I'm not watching that. And my friends have asked me to watch, like, I'll show them really messed up movies, but I'm like, I refuse to put myself through that again with that movie
How many times have you watched it?
once. There's not
Yeah.
an inch of me that's like, let's give it another shot.
Yeah. That's how I have. I mean, I have Serbian film.
Mhm.
We Are the Flesh.
Oh yeah. Do you have the Arrow one?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
picked that up. I didn't know what it was. It was such a blind buy and it was $3. I put that on and I was like, holy crap, dude.
Yeah, dude. It was a blind buy for me as well. I actually was so skeeved out. I remember like getting paranoid because it was in my basement and I lived by myself at the time. I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids or nothing. And I just watched the movie by myself and I just felt so like freaked out. I had to turn the lights on.
Yeah.
Like
It was like
it made me feel
something is
uneasy.
watching me. Something is going to drop
Yeah.
on me or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. With all that being said, Sinister Tims, let's just go right to the beginning, my man. What was the first horror movie that you remember watching, and how did it make you feel?
I actually remember this so perfectly. I was 4 years old. So I grew up in Alaska, but during the summers, I'd come down to Salt Lake City, Utah, stay with my dad for the summer. And he was just moving into his new apartment. And I was helping him unbox, whatever was already untaped. And he had this box of VHS tapes. And I was already interested. I already liked movies. I watched them probably a little bit more than most kids. And they were all horror. That's my dad's whole thing was horror movies, grew up very punk and grunge. And so I started looking through them. There are three movies that really caught my eye on VHS, and that was Child's Play 2, Pumpkinhead, and Jeepers Creepers. I asked my dad, I kind of gave it to him. I was like, can I watch this? And it was Pumpkinhead. And he was like, yeah, I mean, that's not too much. He was like, there's no nudity. There's nothing super graphic in it. So he popped it in the VCR. And that night I watched Pumpkinhead and then Child's Play 2 and then Jeepers Creepers in that row.
Wow, you were 4 years old.
It was four. It
Hell
wasn't, I
yeah.
remember, people always ask me, like, were you scared? And I think at first, like, Pumpkinhead was, like, kind of freaky. I mean, I
Yeah.
went from, normal Nickelodeon movies, and then I was very interested in this. So it was a bit of a shock at first, but instantly I was in love. I think for that whole summer, all I did was watch every single VHS tape he had, every single DVD he had.
Did you have at any given point prior to that any kind of exposure to horror, whether it be like more of gateway horror, like TV shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps or anything like that?
Yeah, I watched Goosebumps growing up, a little bit of Are You Afraid of the Dark, and then I saw my dad used to collect old McFarlane figures. So he had this giant, like 12-inch Michael Myers statue that it was motion censored. So when you walked by it, it'd play the theme song and scream. So I was kind of always around it. His wallpaper for his desktop was the Evil Dead 2 poster, the skull with the eyeballs. And then again, like he used to be in a band and it just had some of that horror energy, somewhat horror energy. Yeah, I kind of have always been around it when it came to my dad.
I was also 4 years old when I was exposed to a horror film that left a mark on me. The film was called Hellraiser, and I was at my cousin's house. We were visiting, and my mom and my aunt had to go shopping. They had to go food shopping. When they left, my cousins decided to put it on, and I watched, I would say about 70% of it without necessarily covering my eyes. As a 4-year-old, there's a lot that you can witness, but there's not a lot that you can understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that movie, there's a lot of intense imagery in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Enough that it scars you, but you don't realize that, I guess you could say, the damage that it's doing to somebody.
Yeah.
Because there is a sort of psychological damage that is occurring at that moment for any child to be exposed to anything of that nature. I had recurring nightmares for about 10 years because of that film. I had this nightmare where I was always in this, it felt like a warehouse. I'll try to describe it as best as possible to how I actually saw it in my dream, but it was an aerial shot of a warehouse. In this warehouse, there were really tall, let's call them bookshelves, and they were all lined up, and the entire thing was just rows and rows and rows of bookshelves. Just you couldn't see anything past it. And I would always be walking through trying to find my way out. It was almost set up like a maze. And as the dream would progress, the POV would start like kind of honing in closer to me. And as that was happening, the room itself would become smaller and smaller to the point where eventually at the end of the dream, the room would close in on me and I would be placed in a small cube. I was basically in a box. And I never understood that dream until years later when I moved to the U.S. I was living in Costa Rica. I moved to the U.S. and I lived in a city called Elizabeth, New Jersey. As we were driving from this restaurant that we were at called El Salvadoreño, I remember all this so vividly. We're driving down the main street in the city, heading home, and we went past the movie theater, and I saw a poster. Big poster for these old school style theaters. The whole like marquee had basically this entire thing of it, and it was Pinhead, and it was a poster for Hellraiser 3: Hell on Earth. And at that moment, my brain fired up, and it was like as if somebody took a key to a closed door, locked door in my head, and just opened it, and all these memories started to flood in. And I realized at that moment that my dream was symbolic to whatever happened in the movie that, made all of that imagery kind of pop in my head. And then the more I thought about it years later, when I decided to finally revisit it, because I was too terrified of it, like to be quite frank, I was horrified of the movie. It was the only character to this day that I was unable to have anything of his memorabilia wise. I love my room is decorated with horror. I have, Jane Levy's razor cut tongue of Fangoria to my left, signed by her, the cover of Fangoria. I have every horror icon, all over the place. I have signatures from everybody. And Doug Bradley, or Miss Pinhead, however you want to call him, it was just somebody that for whatever reason I couldn't put up a poster if I wanted to. I couldn't accept it. It made me feel almost like terrified at the thought that could, like, I could somehow convey enough power onto something to actually make it real. That's how much this film gave
It
like
got
trauma.
to you.
Yeah. Years later, I finally had the opportunity to meet Doug Bradley, and it was scary. This wasn't that long ago. This was less than 5 years ago. And I remember going up to him and just, I had like my heart was beating fast. It almost felt like I needed to do it. You know, it was like I had to prove to myself like I can do this. I got over it. And after that, I got him to sign my copy of Hellraiser. I also was able to meet Clive Barker, and he also signed it. And it was after that conversation that I said, okay, I can do this. I bought a painting of a friend of mine who does like these amazing paintings. He uses wine, he uses coffee,
Ooh.
and he creates these beautiful artistic renditions of these characters. Finally, have something of his. I bought the lament box, the actual prop box
Ooh.
from I'm blanking out on her name. I can't believe it. She was at the con also, and she sells the props, and she sold me this beautiful prop of the lament box, and to this day I have it. It sits there, and like now I have this like almost like I welcome it. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm so over it. But
You
it's still
embraced it.
today, it to this day, I mean, it definitely did damage. So I can't even imagine, you know, that was just one movie. You took on the task of three,
Yeah.
and we can sit here and discuss which one's more intense than the other. But damn, bro, I was a freshman in high school, I think, when I saw Jeepers Creepers, and that thing still scared the crap out of me. That ending was insane. At the end, hearing his screams but not
Oh yeah.
seeing it, your imagination plays with your head, and you're just like, that is terrifying. Child's Play 2, on the other hand, not so scary for me, but I saw it as an
Yeah.
adult, and I'm like, it's a doll, like I could kick it. That was my like thought
Oh
process.
yeah.
But as a kid, he's probably our height. As a 4 year old, scary. And Pumpkinhead. I mean, Pumpkinhead's terrifying.
It was definitely a shocker at first. I think Jeepers Creepers might have done a little bit more of a number for me. I think the only reason why is because of the ending, because again, hearing his screams and wondering what's happening, and then cut to him basically split down in the middle, eyes are gone and gouged out, and so I think that that point when I was like, okay, that is actually pretty freaky. But I do remember like not having nightmares or thankfully. I don't know why, it just kind of was like I was just instantly intrigued by it. But I think Jeepers Creepers might have freaked me out a little bit out of the three of them the most.
And I think too, you mentioned something that actually stands out to me a lot. You said that your dad had McFarlane toys
Mm.
basically throughout the house. So you were exposed at a very young age to things, regardless if you'd seen the movies or not. You'd seen
Yeah.
certain figures, right?
Oh yeah.
And the fact that you say that is funny because, you know, I have two daughters. I have a 5 year old and a 2 year old. And both of them have grown up seeing all of my displays. And
Mhm.
they're always like, Daddy, what's that? Why is her tongue like that? Why is his face like that? What is that?
Mhm.
And I have to explain it to her. They're just so curious. And that curiosity like almost entices them to want to see these things.
Mhm.
My daughter recently saw Monster Squad, and she was able to sit through the entirety of that film. She loved it. I think she found solace in the fact that there was a little girl in that movie
Oh
close to
yeah.
her age who ends up befriending, Frankenstein, and she found that bond with him to be beautiful, and she loves Frankenstein now.
Good.
That's like
Yeah.
her thing. So it's amazing that you say that. And I can kind of see the correlation with what you kind of went through now. What my daughters are currently experiencing. So
Mhm.
who knows? Maybe they'll be into extreme horror. I don't know. We'll find out. What about horror films do you think really initially drew you in and kept you coming back for more?
Again, growing up as a kid, before any of the movies I watched, I remember always being so attracted to Real Monsters, the show, the cartoon show. And just I loved that they looked different, they were different, they were creepy, but yet they still had each other kind of sense. Like, and growing up in Alaska, there was not like a ton of judgment. Like I wasn't bullied or anything, but I was a kind of an outcast. Seeing them as outcasts and they have each other and as friends, I think that really did it for me. And then going in and watching them, I thought it was so intriguing that you can take these really horrific monsters like Pumpkinhead or the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. You can take it and you can just be like, look, it's not as bad as you'd expect. Like, yeah, they're supposed to be the villains. They're supposed to be these people that you need to stay away from, get away, defend yourself. But there's always been something in me that's like, I kind of want to see more about them. I kind of want to learn more. And then I also got onto the aspects of how do they make these monsters? So then that's when I started watching more to kind of see like if I could figure anything out, if I could kind of look past the camera and see what they were doing. I always remember watching like the behind the scenes, like the making of, like especially for 13 Ghosts. I was so intrigued, like, how'd they get the man who was cut, his legs are missing and his head is missing. How did they do this? It was never scary for me. It was just more like I want to know how these these monsters tick. So I think that's what always kept pulling me for more.
Very interesting. Fun fact about 13 Ghosts. I was at a Q&A where Matthew
Mhm.
Lillard was answering questions, and obviously he's in that film. Somebody asked him about 13 Ghosts, and he rolled his eyes, chuckled, and said, I hate that movie.
Wow.
Yeah, he basically was like, I was just not a fan of that movie. And, people were like shocked. But like, it was just like, yeah, I mean, there's movies that I make and, I'm not like 100% on board with.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's just one of them that he doesn't necessarily care for. But I thought it was
Yeah.
hilarious. Just how he, like, the way he answered it, it was very playful. It wasn't like,
Yeah, he was
screw that
like, you
movie.
shouldn't be talking to me about
No, no,
this.
no, no. He's fantastic. He's probably one of the sweetest guys I think I've ever met. He even gave my daughter a free autograph just because
Wow.
she was I think 4 at the time, and he's like when you're old enough, your dad will tell you about this moment, and like he signed it and gave it to me. It was freaking cool. So, I'm not gonna. The guy's amazing. He's absolutely amazing.
He seems,
Even
I've heard great things.
yeah, yeah. If you ever get a chance to meet him, that
Mhm.
I definitely encourage it. Horror films, there's an appeal to them, right? There's the appeal, I guess, of fear itself. What is it about fear that makes horror movies enjoyable for you? Is it the thrill, the suspense, or is it something deeper?
I think I mean, it might be a little bit of everything, to be honest. I think at first it was what can scare me, and so I'd look for those movies, and it wasn't very hard. Like, I think after watching those 3 movies, I didn't know really what to look for and what would scare me, whether it be movie monsters or the slashers or paranormal. So I just kind of started searching and found what scared me. So I think it was the thrill of what is going to scare me in this movie, how many times can it scare me? And then I think it did go a little deeper because I was like, all right, these are creepy, but I'll watch them 3 or 4 times and I'm like, all right, I need to find something scarier. So I think it was like kind of like almost like a quest to find what can really scare me the most. So I think that's I think at first it was I like this feeling of my heart pounding and what's going to come around that corner or behind the curtain or whatever. And then it eventually kind of evolved into I want to know how scared I can be. I want to be terrified the whole time. I want to know if they have what it takes.
I love that. That's very real, and the way you describe it too, it's very easy to understand it. At least for myself, because
Mhm,
I think as of right now we're on the same playing field. Just the way you
mhm,
explain it, it's how I felt watching movies. Even if I was scared, I still wanted to see it. I still wanted to
yeah.
see it all the way through. I used to cover my eyes. I remember like distinctively doing this, but I would like kind of pop
Mhm.
open the slit and watch through. It somehow made me feel safer if I had my hand across my eyes. But do you prefer psychological horror, supernatural elements, or something more visceral in your horror movies, and why?
I think at first it definitely was paranormal. I really liked that. I was always interested in ghosts. I had this massive, like 2,000 page book about ghosts. And I would sit there, 6 years old, look through it and be like, oh, this is so scary. I was looking for all the scary ghost movies or whatever I could find. And then my dad, because I always saw this guy in a blue jumpsuit and a white mask, and I thought he was a ghost for the longest time because it was just a white mask, 6-year-old brain. So I asked my dad about it, and he was like, oh, that's Michael Myers. And I was like, okay, that's what I want to watch next. And then it instantly switched from paranormal to slasher. I remember watching all the Halloweens in 3 days, 2 days growing up, all the Friday the 13th. As the Halloween movies go on and as the Friday the 13th movies go on, I liked the slasher and then mixed with the paranormal or the occult or whatever. For the longest time, it was slasher. That was the biggest thing. I was collecting mainly slasher movies, I would say about 6 years ago. And then it switched to the more visceral, especially with found footage or horror anthologies. In the 80s and 90s, they were really cutting things out of movies. We didn't get to see the cool director's cut, the unrated versions. So then when like the 2000s came around, we got the Friday the 13th remake, the Rob Zombie movies. There isn't it gets just nastier and bloodier, and that was an instant. All right, I want to see something a lot more graphic.
And you said how old were you when you watched Michael Myers?
6.
Okay. So I mean, yeah, you're 4. You jumped from that to villains, and especially, I guess, let's they're icons, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
who are your favorite horror movie icons
Oh
that
man.
shaped your love for the genre?
All right, before I tell you who are my favorites, I'm
Okay.
gonna get this out of the way because it's always quote unquote controversial for most people.
Okay.
Freddy Krueger has never been it for me.
Okay.
I do enjoy the first one. I know what it did for the horror community, and I respect it. And I actually
Mhm.
like the second one more. But growing up, even right now, I maybe watch the Nightmare on Elm Street movies maybe once every other year.
Okay.
So like I remember everyone growing up, everyone talking about Freddy Krueger, but I could not get behind it. Since I was little, it's always been Michael Myers. Michael Myers has been this like he doesn't talk, he doesn't run, he doesn't you don't see emotion, which was really scary for me. So I saw him as like this he was the superstar of slashers. You didn't hear him do anything. He would just get you. It was
Yeah.
quiet, it was alarming. And then I remember I'd be home alone at times, so I was like, Michael Myers is coming to get me. So it was definitely Michael Myers. Jason played a pretty decent role. Jason Takes Manhattan, this the zombified, gooey, creepy Jason. I mean, I know the movie's horrible, but I love it. So if I look at with him, it's the zombie Jason from Part Seven. The Creeper was always this crazy, scary icon for me. I thought he was different. We don't know what I didn't know what he was. He just had wings. He liked to eat people and wear their skin. So I was like, that's cool. So I think it was Michael, Jason, the Creeper, and I think later on, the Chatterer from Hellraiser. I thought he was. I love how unique the Chatterer looked like.
Did you ever get into Phantasm at all?
I did later on. I think I was 15 or 16 when I first watched them. So I thought I
Okay.
liked them, but they were never in like my top 10.
Phantasm 2 scared the shit out of me.
Really?
I don't know what it was about that. Actually, I do. I think it was the bleak ending. I remember it being the first time I saw a movie with a bleak ending. And to see your
Yeah.
heroes, or like the heroes in the movie, the protagonists, go through hell and then the bad guy gets them in the end. Like that feeling of dread was like, oh my God. And it scared me. I think
Hmm.
that was the first time that I genuinely got scared at the fact that not everybody makes it. Not everyone's gonna,
You're not
it's not gonna
safe.
be yeah, yeah. And like it's weird because like in horror in general, like most people are not safe. Like 95% of the cast always dies. So
Hmm.
it's like, what's the difference? But it's the ending, it's the closure, and the fact that there
Yeah.
wasn't a closure that was satisfying or made you kind of go,
Like,
it's
ah, they're
over.
okay.
Yeah.
It drops you off a cliff and then leaves you
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your go-to horror movie? The one that you recommend to everybody who's new to the genre, and why does it stand out?
Ooh. So for the last, I think I would say 6 or 7 years, I've been recommending House of the Devil. My dad got me again. My dad's gonna be the one who got me into horror. My mom grew up super religious, so she didn't know I was watching all these movies growing up.
Okay.
Ty West is my favorite director and has been for some time now. So whenever someone asks me, like, "Hey, I'm just starting into horror. What's something that can freak me out, but it's not gonna ruin me?" And I recommend House of the Devil or The Innkeepers, but it's mainly House of the Devil. It's a nice slow burn. I love the time frame that it's placed in, the main characters, and then it goes from 0 to 100 so fast, but it's not overdone. It's not too in your face. I think it's perfect.
I'm going to be 100% honest. These are movies that I need to revisit.
Mhm.
When I saw these films, The Innkeepers, House of the Devil, quite a few others within that same period, I was in a really bad place in my life
Mhm.
that a lot of the films that I saw, I did not like. But they're movies that I can't even tell you what happens because it was a one time and done for me that I said,
Yeah.
fuck this movie. And since then, I have revisited so many films that during that time period I didn't like that I now love. Those are movies that, people talk about all the time, and I don't have anything to say
You
about
don't have
them
an opinion. Yeah.
because I remember just not liking them at that time. So it would be interesting to go back and revisit them, especially now that my mindset is so different. I do embrace. I feel like I say this, but I've always embraced slow burn horror films. I do love more story and more character than
Oh yeah.
necessarily like the scares. Like
Mhm.
when the scares happen, but you have a good story with great characters, the scares are now amplified and it's a fantastic
Mhm.
film. But for some reason, just in that time, it just wasn't doing it for me. So
Okay.
I'll definitely have to add those to my list. I'm making a whole list for next year where
Okay.
I am rewatching every single movie that I said I didn't like.
I think The Innkeepers is going to be the one for you. I
Yeah,
mean, for me, Ty West is like the king of slow burns for me.
yeah,
I think he really makes you feel for the characters before anything can even happen to them.
yeah.
And Innkeepers is the one that's the scarier. I guess it would be the scarier one compared to those two. I love the character development, the place it takes, where it takes place in the hotel that's about to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So it is to that point where it goes 0 to 100, and when it does, it's gonna scare you because you're so close. You feel so close and connected to the two main characters
Yeah.
that you feel like your heart is gonna like explode.
Also,
Mm.
You're Next.
Oh, love You're
Hated it.
Next.
Hated
Oh,
it.
it's
I
such a
don't
good one.
and like I can't tell you why. I just know that I left the theater. I was like, movie sucked.
Mhm.
I don't know. So my opinions are not valid when it comes to these because even I know that a lot of times I just hated these movies. The Strangers was another one. My God, I couldn't. I was so mad with that movie. So
Oh,
mad.
my
And
top five.
yes, it's my top 5 home invasion movies now. I rewatched it years later and I was like, what was I smoking? And the fact that I don't even smoke, it says a lot.
Yeah,
I'm like, really, what was I on? Because this movie's incredible, and
you're
how
like
did I
trying to figure
not
out what you hated.
think that? Horror has a lot of different themes, deeper themes in horror specifically. They explore real life fears, social issues. Are there any specific movies that you feel do an exceptional job of this, and how do these themes resonate with you personally?
Oh yeah, I got two actually. That as soon as you said that, People Under the Stairs is the first one that comes to mind. Wes
Yes.
Craven, especially Wes Craven and George Romero were the ones who were like, I don't care what this is what people are saying right now, especially with George Romero with having a black man as the lead character. People were furious, but it's kind of like he doesn't care. But for me, People Under the Stairs was a big one, especially in that time frame. People were just ignoring the real problems, the drug issue that was going on, how so many people were ignored. And so Wes Craven's like, well, let's put them into this situation where they can't ignore it. It's going to be in your face. You're going to see how people who have more money or in a better spot than other people, especially people of color, he's just like, I'm gonna put it in your face so you guys can't ignore the issue. So that's one that really stuck with me. I watched it when I was 10 years old. I had a friend growing up that would always tell me, like, he lived in this really bad apartment. Cops were always there, but they don't care. And I never understood it. I lived only like a few blocks away, but it was just a different environment. So I remember watching that and thinking, oh, holy crap. Like, it's so well hidden. And I remember showing him that movie and he was like, this is exactly what it's like to live in these apartments. Like, you never know what's going to happen. So I think Wes Craven did such a good job at making you watch what is going on in that time frame, what the real issue is going on, and we need to stop ignoring it. So that's like the main one.
Love it. I saw that movie also, I think, when I was like 9 or 10.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's a great gateway horror film, too, because it's not
Yeah,
graphic in any way. The scares are intense,
yeah,
but it's not like so in your face that like you couldn't have a 10-year-old watch it.
oh yeah,
And it definitely it's suspenseful, it's creepy, and there's this almost like kid like quality to it too,
oh yeah,
like a Sandlot type of feel, like because and not because
yeah.
like one of the actors happens to be in the Sandlot, but just just be I don't know. There's just like this feel goodness to it with the two main characters, the girl and the boy,
Mhm.
that I think watching it as a kid, you gravitate towards those characters and you put
Mhm.
yourself in their shoes and you see them overcome the bad. And I think that's I think that's the feel of like the Sandlot style where they overcome something that they fear, like the dog, or like the Goonies. They
Oh yeah,
overcome the bad guys in the movie. And for me, the People Under the Stairs did that, and it doesn't get talked about enough. I love that movie.
oh,
I
I love
have
it.
the VHS, I have the DVD, I have the Blu-ray, and hopefully I'll have the remake if it's
Oh yeah,
good. So looking forward to that. And I think Jordan Peele's producing it, but not directing.
yeah. That's what I
But
heard.
I guess let's get into the darker side of horror. We're slowly making a left turn, folks. So this is where it's gonna start, going the other way. As horror fans, obviously we know that there are some films, that they do cross some lines. How do you feel about gore heavy movies or films that push the boundaries of taste? Do you think that they add to the experience, or do they detract from it?
I absolutely think that it adds a lot to it, especially if it's done right. There are some movies, obviously, not no specific subgenre of the darker side, but there are some movies that like they're like we're doing it for shock, but let's ramp it up to 20.
Yeah.
So it is completely unnecessary for the storyline. Those I'm like, especially with sexual assault scenes, some movies just like, let's just push it and then let's go further and then make it
Right.
worse. And it has nothing. It doesn't do anything to the storyline, to the plot, nothing, or even to the character development. But when it comes to like the gore and just the that feeling of when we're talking about dark movies, that feeling and that your gut feeling where it's like, I don't think I should be watching this. It seems a little too gross.
Mm-hmm.
I think that does add to the effect, especially with someone, for example, who don't get scared in movies. With horror movies, they need something else. They can't find that fear, so they find it in something else. I think it's for the most part, it's a very positive thing. It can add to the story. It can make you feel that sense of dread. So I mean, I love it. I
Yeah.
love the extra gross stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of nailed it when you said, if it's done right. And I think that's the biggest component because when it is done right, it's done so well that you can't ignore what's happening. It
Exactly.
forces you to confront this moment that is occurring on screen, and it's not there to just gross the audience. There's a
Hmm.
reason that it's happening. Where I find it to be detracting from anything is when it's just done for the sake of let's see how much we can push the boundaries on.
Hmm.
It feels amateur. And I won't
Poor
even
writing.
say it feels like very like snuff. Like snuff is a whole other category. We're not even there yet. We're just kind of like scratching the surface. That iceberg meme where it's like horror fans and
Oh
it's like
yeah.
we're right now at surface level still of this. But like there are movies that just try to do something for the sake of like look what we can do, and it cheapens it. It doesn't
Hmm.
make it like, oh my god, it's so gnarly. Like,
It sucks you
no,
out.
it just takes you out. It doesn't move the story forward in any way. While I do feel that less is more a lot of times, and especially when I talk about my favorites,
Mm.
less is more. I can think of a scene in a very particular movie that is, I would consider it extreme for a casual moviegoer, but extreme enough even for me who has seen extreme films
Mm.
that it still is like that, visceral feeling. In the film's Eden Lake, there
Oh
is
yeah.
a particular scene where, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Eden Lake, shut the shit off right now. There is a boy that gets burned alive, and there is a tire that is
Oof.
placed on him. I mean, I'm talking about it right now, and I'm getting goosebumps. When that scene occurred, the screams that
Mm.
child was just giving out, that was enough. We
Mhm.
didn't have to see anything. And guess what? The filmmakers chose to not show it. And they you just heard the screams, and the screams did everything that they needed to do. It filled your head with the imagery, and you forces you as the viewer, which is I think even worse, to imagine what he's feeling in that
Mhm.
moment. And call me a psychopath for wanting to experience this, but I don't know what it is even for me. I can't speak for you, but I'm very empathetic. And the more I can absorb and feel from these situations and movies, it makes me even more empathetic to the situation. And it actually makes me like feel for these fake characters. It makes me cry.
Mhm.
It makes me
Oh
like
yeah.
release this like I don't know what it is. It's not anger. It's not like I have like pent up anger of any kind or anything like that. It's not like I'm getting off on it in any way, but there's
Yeah.
this release of like I just went through this with this person. My God, I can only imagine. And it makes me sympathize and empathize for
Mhm.
anybody that could potentially go through something like that in real life. It's weird, man. I can't explain it really. I mean, that's just what I just said is the best way that I could explain it. But that's a movie that, again, it might not be the most extreme, right? Visually, but it's a fucking sucker punch, and it's a hard one. And
Oh
ending,
yeah. I would
the
say, especially
ending,
the ending. It's what we were talking about before. It's she's gone. She's made it. She's got
yeah.
help. And then in that last 3 4 minutes, you're like, oh my god, it got worse for her.
Yeah, yeah. So there's movies like that, and then there's other movies where I think this is the only one that I'm going to throw in early because it's sort of fresh. I recently watched it because I've heard so many people talk about it. And I'm like, all right, let's fucking see this bullshit. The film's called Trauma. It's a Chilean film. Um, if you've seen it, You know exactly what I'm talking about. But I'm not even going to get into the whole movie right now. I'm just going to talk about the opening scene. And the
Oof.
opening scene told me exactly what I needed to know about the
Hmm.
movie and needed to know. It told me very early on that I'm not going to enjoy this movie. Not because I
Yep.
can't handle it, but it's just because to me it felt very amateur to
Poor
a
taste.
point. It
Yeah.
was, so in the scene, it opens up with a boy standing in front of his mother. His mother's terribly mutilated at this point. She's still alive, and this man forces this boy onto his own mother and helps him. Okay, and I'm
Hmm.
going to say that. And that alone is terrifying. Just talking about that is terrifying. But why is it that when I watched it, I rolled my eyes instead? It was because the scene, when it should have cut, when it should have moved away from frame, because, okay, you want to show a little bit of it to let the people know what the hell to expect, fine. Do what you got to do. I'm all about artistic expression. I don't believe in censorship, despite what it may show. I don't believe in censorship, even though I have problems with certain things. I'll say it again. I don't have problems with censorship. However, this scene just decided to hover and show this. And there's a point where my brain goes, who is this for? It's not for the audience. And I feel like I'm a filmmaker. I feel for me as a filmmaker, I don't know. That's saying something about me. That's saying something about what I want to see. Like, I want to have this moment and I want it to keep going and going. And going and going doesn't make the scene, that much better. We get it. 1, 2 pump, we're good. We understand. We don't need 16, 17, 30 more freaking seconds of the same shit. It just gets to a point where it, to me, it just doesn't do anything. But that's just my opinion. How do you feel about how did you feel about that? At least that scene. Let's not talk about the movie yet,
It
but that scene.
Yeah, it came off as, again, like how you were saying, because I'm also a filmmaker. It came off lazy to me. It came off as I'm gonna try my hardest. I'm gonna make the most disgusting movie. It was
Yeah,
kind of like he was gonna throw a fit if it didn't affect you. So he
yeah,
did everything in his power to make it the most visceral, disgusting thing you've ever seen in the first 10. Let's say like, just the intro,
yeah,
and then it's like, okay, I get it. You want this to be disgusting, which it is, but the fact that you continue to show it and show it and show it, it comes off as lazy. It comes off as poor taste, poor writing. And again, I watched that movie, yeah, all the way through, and we'll talk about that later. But that really pulled me out of it. Again, as a
yeah,
someone who makes movies, it's like I wouldn't do that. I
yeah.
have some pretty gnarly scenes coming up in my new movie coming out, but we don't sit there and look at it. It's a quick look, and then you then let the audience figure out what's going on. Showing the audience the whole thing, it can take people out instantly.
Let's switch gears a little bit here. There's a term that floats around the horror community, one that is a little triggering for me. Um, what are your thoughts on the rise of elevated horror versus the more traditional slasher or monster films? Do
Oh
you
man,
prefer one over the other?
I can praise it in some sort of sense. I feel like it's changing the game of horror, yes, and that can be a great thing. We can't just be stuck on the same thing for the rest of the of eternity.
Yes.
But I think it's put too much on a pedestal. I think it's praised a way too much, in my opinion. Ari Aster, is that his
Yeah,
name?
yeah,
Can't stand him.
yeah.
I watched, and like I guess he would be categorized as with his
Yeah,
movies as elevated, correct? Yeah.
yeah.
I remember hearing about Hereditary for months. Everyone was praising it. Everyone was coming to me telling me it's the scariest movie you are ever going to see. And so I got overhyped, and that was my kind of my intro to elevated horror. I was like, okay, I'm gonna wait until it comes out. I'll buy it because again, I'm a collector. So I was like, I'm gonna do that because I'm a little skeptical of people. So I was like, all right, it's this whole new world. I'm gonna watch it. Watched it, put the disc back in its case, and I threw it away. The
Oh
only time I've
wow,
ever thrown a movie away,
wow.
and I could not stand it. I mean, I get and this is for not just Ari Aster's movies, with the whole elevated horror in general. For the most part, it's cinematic. It's gorgeous. I get that. The cam work is absolutely amazing. The acting is going to be phenomenal, and the practical gore is going to be great. But I feel like they only the elevated horror, subgenre only really wants to focus on those. They're like, as long as we make everything look gorgeous, we can get away with quite a bit. It comes off, in my opinion, a lot of it comes off as lazy writing. I see so many gaps. I see so many. Well, what about this? They just talked about this. I get it. The story might come in full circle, or they might have some weird twist, but there's pieces still missing. So it comes off as lazy to me, and for the most part.
Very interesting how your approach to the film itself. You're hearing all this hype about this movie, so there's already an expectation that is
Mhm.
brewing, and you go and see the movie and it's not at all what you're hearing.
Mhm.
So immediately it's like, do you think that the expectation maybe played a big part in it, or do you think that had there not been any talk about this movie, maybe would you have, you know, actually enjoyed it?
So at first, that's exactly what I thought. After getting rid of Hereditary, I remember it was when he was coming out with, or Midsommar just came out,
Hmm.
and I was like, maybe I was just being too harsh. Maybe I was just kind of stuck in this mindset of you guys are wrong. So I remember I bought it again, but I bought it in this A24 collection. And so I was like, I'm not gonna spend my money on just Hereditary, just in case. And I remember being like, I'm gonna completely be totally open minded. I'm going to, really allow myself to really feel for this movie. And it was the same thing. I really, really loved the cinematography. I loved the practical effects. Some scenes in that movie, pretty cool. The whole piano wire with the head scene is pretty cool. um, they had some good elements, but again, for me, it was the story fell flat. And then I was like, maybe it's just Hereditary. I'll watch Midsommar. And maybe I'm just calling out Ari Aster way too much, but I was like, I'm really going to try to like Midsommar. I didn't watch trailers for it. I ignored everybody. Like I tried to just have my own opinion out the bat. Hated it. Couldn't
Very
stand it.
interesting. When Hereditary came out, I did not see any trailers for it, other than I think it was like a teaser that was just announced, obviously, like most are, and they didn't really show much. But in that teaser, I was like, oh, wow, that looks really interesting. It was enough for me to go, yeah, I'll check it out. And I don't know how you necessarily do with trailers, but I usually see one trailer and that's it. It's a thing of mine. I ignore everything else that comes out afterwards because I just don't want to see it. Trailers spoil a lot of things. And that's even for movies that I don't necessarily care for. But if I watch one enough to intrigue me, that's all I need to see. I don't go seek anything else out. So, with that being said, I saw the teaser. I was like, yeah, I'll check this out. I saw it opening night before there was any hype to kind of go out into the stratosphere, right? And I enjoyed it. I genuinely enjoyed it. I remember watching the movie and thinking, wow, this was really effective for me. It felt scary. It felt suspenseful. At times it was funny. It was like weird to like laugh at moments. But overall, that sense of dread is what I really liked about it. I love the ending. I said, yeah, this is cool. I'm excited to see what this guy does next. When the Blu-ray came out, I bought the Blu-ray, but I never rewatched it. I just bought it and I was like, it just sat there. It still sat sealed. Midsommar comes out, and went to see it in theaters. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the theater experience. I thought that the beginning was super intense, so powerful. This shot of the girl with the freaking thing to her mouth, and
Oh
like,
yeah.
I was like, whoa, okay, this is fucking heavy. This dude is not playing around. And this is coming off of my what I remembered feeling in Hereditary, because again, I didn't rewatch Hereditary prior to seeing Midsommar. I do remember that in Midsommar or Midsummer, however the hell you pronounce this movie, whatever. I do remember that there were a lot of ups and downs in terms of like how I should be feeling. Sometimes I wanted to laugh. Other times I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then other times I'm like, whoa, Overall, I enjoyed it, not as much as Hereditary, but I also didn't enjoy the theater experience because I had a lot of kids in the theater that were laughing and that distracted me, and it just was a bad experience all throughout. I still enjoyed it enough that I bought it. I have not seen Midsommar since I bought it, still sitting in my collection unopened. 2 years ago, my mom came over and we were watching something on TV, and she mentioned something about this one movie. I was like, oh, I have this movie that you guys should watch. And it was like, my mom likes to watch some scary movies every now and then. and she likes to watch more of like the psychological side of things. So I was like, Hereditary is more that. There are some gorish moments here and there, but overall it's more, of the like the occult and that sort of thing. She'll enjoy this. And I remember watching it going, this isn't as good as I remember it. I'm like, what is this? It's so weird. And when I finished, it wasn't, I didn't think it was bad, but I didn't think it was anywhere near of what I felt the first time around. And I was like, that's so odd. Like, maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe I was in the right mindset when I saw it, whatever the case was. And now I'm kind of like just afraid to watch Midsommar because I'm like, what the hell am I going to feel when I watch that one? Because I know
Yeah.
that one was already very divisive. Then I watched The Strange Thing About the Johnsons.
Mhm.
And this was before the new one came out. What was it? Something about Bo. I
Bo's
forget.
afraid.
Bo's Afraid. Thank you. And the short that he did, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, is ridiculous. I mean, it is wild. If you guys have not seen The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, check it out. I am not one person to ever tell somebody to not watch something. I'm always like, watch it yourself, form your own opinion. I think it's something that should be watched by everybody that enjoys this anything Ari Aster. And then I watched Beau's Afraid, and Beau's Afraid was weird. It felt like the R-rated, high on shrooms version of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, with like scary elements.
That's fair.
And I remember saying to myself, I'm like, this like thing that he's created with Hereditary, that he was able to still have this like veil on people through Midsommar, is slowly being like lifted. And it's like this one trick pony is like kind of like just coming undone in a weird way. And back to what we were saying about a movie like Trauma, I feel like elevated horror almost falls in that same category. Well, not in the same category, but on the same playing field as extreme horror. Whereas, yeah, one's not necessarily showing you things, but one's trying so hard to be so smart and edgy that it's almost overdone to the point where it takes you out. The same way that extreme gore can be so overdone, it just takes you out. And that's really how I feel about this whole extreme horror, or I'm sorry, this whole elevated horror genre, where like I find myself, part of me also finds myself not liking more so the fans. It's like the fan base
Yeah.
themselves, it's like,
They're aggressive. Like, oh, you
yeah,
don't like this? All
yeah,
right, then you're
yeah,
not a real horror fan. And I'm like,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right,
And
I'll take that.
I feel like these fans make it their personality that they are A24 like film bros, if that makes sense. And it's like this almost like subgenre of snobbiness
Oh yeah.
within the genre that I've never really seen before. Like, you've
Oh
had
yeah.
you've had horror in the past, but you add that now title to it, which is like, the younger generation is obsessed with titles that I feel like they had to categorize it, when in reality it's like, did you though? But like, if we're thinking then what is elevated horror, and did it recently come out? Well, no. I mean, would then It Follows be considered elevated horror?
I've thought about that too. The
You know,
Babadook.
Babadook, like these are movies that like, I feel that if they're movies that A24 would release, then you can lump them up into the category of elevated horror. Even Talk to Me, Talk to
Hmm.
Me could be
Oh yeah.
categorized into that. But it's just, there's this like almost level of like, I'm smarter than you. And
It's
oh,
the
you didn't,
A24 bubble.
yeah, you didn't get it. Oh, please. Like, you
You're
all
not
of
a
a
real
sudden,
fan.
yeah, all of a sudden you have this accent when you're talking about
Hmm.
movies. And that, I don't know, it's so funny to me because I've never felt that until that term kind of got brought out. So I
Hmm.
just find it interesting that you say that, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
totally, I totally see that. Extreme horror films. Let's get right into it. You know, the more popular mainstream one, and when I say mainstream, it doesn't mean that it's like the easy watch of all of these, but it's
Mhm.
mainstream because even people that have never seen extreme horror know this film, a Serbian film.
Yeah.
um, Extremely divisive. Even within the extreme horror, I guess, clique, a
Mhm.
very divisive film. Have you seen it? And if so, how did it affect you?
Oh yeah, I have the Blu-ray of it with the slipcover.
Okay.
Um, so a Serbian film was one of the first ones that I watched getting into the extreme cinema because I was getting to that point where I was like, not a lot scaring me right now. I think I need to look for it in something else. And that's when I kind of did a lot of research and realized there's a darker side of horror movies than there already is. So I remember doing a lot of research, and a Serbian film was one that always came up, and it was always, "This is the most extreme movie you're ever going to see,"
Yeah.
and it was Serbian film and a few other movies like the first August Underground and maybe a couple others, but or Begotten. But a Serbian film was like, "This is going to be the top of the most disturbing list." So I remember finally getting my hands on it. It was oh, I think it was an import. I went to my friend's house. They had like a DVD player that would play it, and it was like a Ukrainian or German import with subtitles. And I was like, all right, I'm ready to watch this. If it's at the bottom of the barrel, the most disgusting thing, if I watch it now, then everything else will be a breeze. So I remember watching it, and I was like, this is just a horror movie. Obviously, yes, there are some very extreme scenes, like the newborn scene, and
Yeah.
in my opinion, the last 10 minutes is what really does it for me.
Yeah.
But I remember finished watching it, and I'm like, this is the hype. This is the movie that everyone's telling them that it scarred them for the rest of their lives. It's like, I mean, it did what it was intended to do, which grossed me out. Completely. It was the most disgusting movie I watched by far, but I was expecting a lot more. That's when I kind of realized Serbian film's kind of at the top of the iceberg when it comes to
Mhm.
visceral and disgusting and the disturbing movies.
Yeah.
So it definitely did its part on grossing me out. I was just expecting a lot more, but it did its part.
So I had this discussion with somebody else, and I actually removed the segment altogether because it became an argument, not a discussion, which is
Mm.
what I look for to have. Our discussions, never
Yeah.
arguments. Because at the end of the day, you and I are gonna not have, as of right now, I think we've agreed on everything, which is like shocking even to me because I'm usually like, I mean, well, no, because I mean, you like the Innkeepers and House of the Devil, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I thought they sucked, but it's not an argument. It's just like I recognize, and respect your opinion on it, and you understand where I'm coming from with mine, and
Yeah.
we move on amicably,
That's how it should be.
right? But with a Serbian film, I have seen so many people talk about it and use it as a talking point to insult anybody that either owns it, has watched it, or tries to defend it. There was a post that was sent to me by somebody. I'm not going to mention the creator's name, but he goes off and like basically it's his way of like how he attacks anybody who owns the movie. And I find it so ironic that this person is also a horror content creator and he has films in his collection that he talks about and he uses words to describe them as gnarly, sick, twisted, and it's like interesting. So you just said to me that because I may own this film, somebody should be checking my hard drive. But you're over here defending a movie that's super gnarly that happens to have, SA for other people, violence towards women. Like, what are you really saying then? What is it about the movie that you just don't accept? Or is it because maybe a part of you actually was intrigued by it and you just can't admit it to yourself?
Yep.
Because the danger, and I say it like this, the danger of a Serbian film is that the film, and this is me talking from a filmmaker standpoint, and I think you being a filmmaker as well, you can chime in however you want on this, but I think the danger about a Serbian film, it is such a beautifully done film. It is polished. I mean, it's shot on a red.
Hmm.
The acting is
Believable.
good. It's not bad. The cinematography is I think fantastic. The color grading, there's a look to it that feels very Hollywood or
Hmm.
as close as you
Oh yeah.
could to Hollywood for a film that has such disgusting subject material, right? So you watch it, but you don't feel that like, you know, that
Dread.
that that dread because you're looking at this like really really beautiful film. Now I made the decision, which I never do with any films except this movie, and to this date, it is the only movie that I've done this with, where I looked up everything that happens in the movie prior to watching it. I have to see this. As a fan of horror, I owe it to myself. I need to see this. I can't just take people's word for it, because I'd be such a hypocrite, because I say the same thing. I'm like, fuck you. Like, I'm not going to not watch something because you tell me no. I need to make my own opinion, because I know that some people can twist things around and,
Oh yeah.
whatever the case is. And there was really no way of getting it other than buying it directly from the director.
Mhm.
So I bought it directly off of the director, which happened to be the full uncensored cut. Now, it was the one that showed everything. It, if you've seen the full uncensored cut, then there's a real big difference of impact with the film, because the ending is completely different. They cut out a lot of stuff in all the other cuts that exist in the film, that the ending just feels like gratuitous, and that's it. Whereas the full uncensored, it's fucked. The last 10 minutes, like you said, it's fucked. It's like, bro, like, you want bleak, you got it. You
Mhm.
want it well done, here it
Here it
is.
is.
It's fucking bleak steak, well done, charcoal fries, and you don't get any water. You don't get anything to drink. You can't wash it down. It is that much of an impact that that ending has. And I saw it and I was like, wow, that is so fucked, man. Like, holy shit. Like, why did he do this movie? And then I started to dig deeper, and I researched more about him, what he was trying to say with the movie. And then I was like, all right, bro, you want to say certain things about your government. Listen, I know a lot of Bosnians who are refugees who have left those areas because of the war that you are talking about, and I know the situation is bad. And to, for to be respectful to the people that I do know personally, their stories are equally as disgusting and terrifying as this movie are. So just leave it at that. But to make a movie and say that that movie is the equivalent of that, and you're showing that this is the way that the government basically fucks you from birth. That was his explanation for the newborn scene, that you're basically introduced to the world and you're fucked from the go. I'm like, there's other ways you can say that.
Oh yeah.
Maybe just like an article on
Something.
a table somewhere, just
Yeah.
saying, children, newborn babies dead, thrown off, or burned alive, something. We didn't have to go that extreme.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that I'm like very like back and forth on, but overall, it's such an important film that exists,
Mhm.
because it does make people talk, and it
Oh yeah.
does, open up to the possibility that some of these movies, yeah, while they may be disgusting, um, if done right, they can really be impactful. Whether it's a positive impact or not, it's still an impact nonetheless. And Serbian film definitely does that. There's also, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a documentary coming out.
Unearthed
It's,
films.
yeah, Unearthed Films, a Serbian documentary. The only thing, and this is where we're gonna start. This is where I really want to pick your brain and kind of go, all right, let me see, let me get your thoughts on this for real, because this is gonna segue into the next part. Is that I did watch the trailer for the documentary, and there's some things in there that that validate a lot of the feelings that I had about when it comes to the directors and the choice that the directors make for certain scenes, for certain movies, scripts, whatever it is. And the way that they were speaking about it, the director was speaking about it and he was laughing about certain situations, you know? And I'm like, huh, okay. It reminded me of an interview that I saw with the director of the August Underground movies. The August Underground movies are, for me personally, bottom of the barrel. They are, they're that crossover from your, and again, this is just my opinion, they are that crossover of, no, this isn't horror, this isn't even a movie, this is called porn. You have a fetish, and
Mhm.
you have people that are willing to do these things for you on camera. You can call it art all you want. When you have a girl that's like cutting herself for real on camera, you're exploiting people's pain, you're exploiting people's trauma. And not for nothing, if somebody, we all have fucking issues. There's not a single perfect soul, and we all have different ways that we deal with trauma. Mine for the longest time was my bad relationship with food. Okay.
Hmm.
That's how I dealt with my shit. A lot of times I would overeat because I got emotional and I didn't know how to stop. And it's a vicious cycle. Some people hurt themselves in other ways. And when you see that and you take advantage of that, I just don't fuck with that. That's just a point where I'm like, what are we doing? And, you know, I ask you this, for horror films that exist like that, extreme horror films, do you think that these films, particularly the August Underground movies, do you feel like they serve a purpose beyond the shock value, or is it really just that?
I think I think maybe with a lot of them when it comes to that shock, I feel like at first the director has good intentions. They have a great idea. They have what they're looking for. And like I've done this as a director or filmmaker, where I do a scene and I'm like, all right, let's maybe make it a little bit more gross, or let's see how that looks. Just push it a little bit. We're not going to completely open it and make it visceral. I think a lot of directors get super lost during that moment. They forget the fine line between this is a movie and let's push the actors until they literally can't go any further. And I think a lot of directors with the extreme cinema, like August Underground and the Guinea Pig movies, Grotesque, um, a lot of those, I feel like they sometimes forget what they're doing and
Mm-hmm.
where they were supposed to be and just go as dark and as deep and as evil as they can get just for the shock factor. So I think with a lot of them, it starts off with good intentions, but that director or the actors or whoever, they just get so stuck in their head. They get this isn't extreme enough. We're trying to be extreme, and once you get used to that situation, you feel like it's not as extreme as it when it actually is. So they push it even further, and that's when the whole cutting yourself in real life for that movie or actually throwing
Oh
up on
no,
an
yeah.
individual, and that's when they completely lose themselves in the movie, I think.
Am I watching a movie, or am I watching a guy's deepest, darkest desires and he
Yeah.
got people to go, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm going to do this? There are some guys that can't separate that. Do you think there's
Oh
any
yeah.
danger to that, to
Oh,
having movies
100%.
like
I mean, look at Lucifer Valentine, for example. Horrendous piece of shit.
Yeah.
I think he started off again with the intentions of let's make something crazy. Let's make something gnarly. And he succeeded with his first film, and he goes, all right, let's dive a little deeper and deeper. And I think he got so lost with not only the fame that his movies brought him, but what he was putting into them, what he was watching on the daily, what he was, repeat of scenes. I think it just kind of cut the strings in his brain of, I can do this in the movie. Why can't I do this in real life? If I want a scene with sexual assault, what's the difference if I go out and do it? I think that was his mindset. So I mean, I think not a lot. I do think directors, when it comes to the extreme cinema, forget or don't care anymore. The line between this is a movie and this is real, and they stop caring, and it fucks them over.
I love your outlook on it because it just shows how jaded I am as a human. They start with good intentions, where I go, this fucker's always been this way. And this was the safe way for him to explore that without the repercussions.
Hmm.
And because he can hide behind the it was
Camera.
art, right?
Hmm.
Also, as a filmmaker, I am never personally going to ever make a movie like that in the first place. I'm never going to go and say, I want to make this movie, because I don't feel that there's a need to go to that level
You
of it,
can't relate to it.
right?
You don't have a reason to do so.
Right. So if somebody has a reason to do so, is it not then because a part of them wants to essentially, there's that fetish, right? Like You, it's like, I mean, when you think about pornography, most people aren't going from like boy girls not enough to like, barn busters 65. I do see your side of it.
Yeah.
And I love to because even you as a filmmaker, I haven't even gotten into like the kind of movies that you make, but it I mean, it sounds to me like you have like a mix, or is it all horror, or is it like what kind of films do you make? You're like
I make,
August Underground hardcore.
yeah, I'm
Those are
making the fourth one.
hell yeah. All right, I'll see you
um,
later, man. Have a good night, everyone.
yeah, yeah. I make strictly horror. When it comes to the subgenre of horror, I don't have one specific one. I've been filming for 14 years, and I'll do paranormal, I'll do slasher, I'll do a little bit more of the not extreme side, but a little bit more of like the pushing the limits. Um, I'll do what if I come up with an idea, if I can write a script, and if I can write a second, third, and fourth to the point where I'm becoming obsessed with the script. That's how I know I have something. We're filming something right now, actually. Um, should be done February.
Hell yeah. Do you have a website where we can see
Not
the
yet.
previous
So
stuff?
we
Nothing?
we're setting it up right now. I have an old YouTube channel where my last short film I think I made it with $300. Technically 600 because I rented out my local theater, my local megaplex, and showed it there. Um, but it's just I think it's actually in my TikTok link tree. It's just my first and last name, but those are my old projects. I filmed a lot of those on my iPod 5.
Oh wow.
I just had such a passion about it. Do you like, for example, do you remember the meme "Dat Boy" was the frog on a unicycle?
Yeah.
It was so big. Um, I was like, that's kind of funny. Can I make it scary? Obviously, it wasn't scary. It was so stupid. But I made 4 movies about this guy. He's an alien frog, and he comes down to Earth, and he puts on this person's skin and wears it, and he stalks these. He befriends and stalks these people in their townhouse, and then it kind of escalates. We did a found footage one where it shows he's been around since the late '80s, and then the fourth one I rented out an entire haunted house attraction, and it was a whole. It's one of Utah's biggest one. It has a swamp in it, and they're like, yeah, go ahead and film for as many hours as you want. I gave them $100. And
Awesome.
so a lot of those are passion projects, ones that I did with friends. And then up until recently, I was like, I need to get serious with this. This is what I want to do. So we made this movie called The Pale Woman. And I actually think I have the slate for one of the last scenes that we did.
Oh hell yeah.
I thought that was really cool, but that one was more paranormal. My little brother is actually the main character because he also films. He does a lot of he does comedy for the most part. That one was I actually put like $500 into that. So it was like an $800 project with the theater rental, but that one I put a little bit more love into, and I realized that I need to kind of push myself. It's on YouTube, but we rented out the megaplex in a town in Utah, and I was scared. I was like, dude, that's like 300, $400, $500 we put into renting it. And I was, I mean, as a filmmaker, I don't know if maybe you can relate, but you're like, no one's gonna come and see this, no one's gonna watch it.
Yeah.
I spent all my money on nothing. We sold out every single seat. Me and the co-director at the time stood up and watched the movie, and it wasn't that great, but you can see the improvement. So with this one, it's a lot better. There's a
You're
lot
selling me,
more,
bro. You're selling me.
dude. It's I mean, I can tell you a little bit about it if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't want you to like say anything that you're gonna end up going, fuck, I shouldn't have said anything. We could totally do it off camera if you want. But
I'm fine with telling you.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So this new project, it's my first full-length feature film. We're looking at maybe an hour and 49 minutes. It's called Site 31, and it turned into an anthology. It wasn't going
Ooh.
to be, but I really like the idea of I like cryptids, and I like creatures, and I like movie monsters. Obviously, can I do my own take on some of them without obviously getting in trouble, but also making cryptids scarier than what they are?
Mhm.
So I came up with Site 31, where it does follow two teenagers, um, dark web, all that stuff. The first time ever doing it, his older brother shows him how to do it, and they're clicking. There's nothing really going on, and they finally see like a little URL or whatever, or the onion that shows it just says 31. And so they're like, they click on it, and it's just a black screen, and it just says tape one, tape two, all the way to tape six, which it says loading. And so that's what it gets darker and it gets scarier, and then lives become in danger. And another thing I can tell you is we made some super cool monsters. One I can give away because I've already posted it and talked about it. We went 10 miles, maybe less, from Skinwalker Ranch onto the Skinwalker Mountains. And we were, I think, an hour and 10 minutes away from the closest gas station, the closest person. And we made a Skinwalker.
That's
And
sick.
yeah, he was this 6'5", 6'6" guy, like super skinny. He had the build for it. He's on Ghost Adventures. He's on a lot of weird little projects. We put him in this costume, and he's just walking around the middle of the desert in the 2 o'clock in the morning. And this poor guy was getting targeted by something. But we're doing a lot of cryptids for this movie. We're doing a lot of things that you may have seen with a darker turn twist to it,
Yeah.
without crossing any lines. Because I know I don't need to do that,
Hmm.
but this project will be in film festivals. We're doing a theater tour for it.
Fuck yeah, dude. Oh man, that's exciting. I'm like genuinely hyped, and I'm not saying this just because I'm sitting in front of you talking right now. Like, you have a great elevator pitch. Immediately, I'm like, yeah, this is something I would totally see. You do practical effects as well?
I do everything. Yeah.
Amazing.
So what I do is I write, I'll direct, I produce, I'll do most of the camera work. I do the costume designs, I'll do the special effects, the gore, the makeup. I sometimes I'll have someone else help me with makeup, but
Hmm.
especially when we're out in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
um, I'll most of the time do it. I had some help. I've been thankfully allowing myself to accept help from people that are genuinely wanting to help me.
Hmm.
I don't know if you have the same problem, but when I have a vision, it has to be done that way. So I feel like I have to do everything.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I hired a editor. I hired some more makeup crew, so I can focus more on the filming and the storyline itself.
Yeah.
But I've done everything.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when it comes to projects, there are certain things where over time I have kind of backed off on certain things
Mhm.
because I always had to do everything myself, and having to do everything myself hindered a lot of what I was
Oh yeah.
doing, because it was not perfect enough. Then I wasn't putting it out, or I
Mhm.
wasn't finishing it. And it was just time after time. I'm like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I have to trust other people to, like,
Mhm.
allow their creative juices to kind of like take over. And who knows what it's going to do to amplify whatever it is that I may have created. So right now I'm on my third draft of my first full length, full feature. And it's been a little bit scary because this is the first time that I'm putting out information about my life, because it is something that did occur to me. So it is a very personal film. It is a drama with elements that are horror in it.
Okay.
Um, and I am taking some creative freedoms in exaggerating certain parts to essentially give the impact that I want for specific things to happen at the end. And this is one of those movies where I know for a fact there's only going to be two two thoughts at the end of the movie. You either are going to fucking love it or you're going to hate it. There is no in between. I did not make this to have a audience member to go, it was okay. No, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. You're not gonna like it, or you are gonna really like it. That's it. There's just none of that. And again, it's something personal to me, and it's the first time that I'm allowing somebody to actually come on board to like help me write the actual screenplay.
Okay.
So the story is mine. Like I wrote the story, but the screenplay, it's me and someone else that I actually met online playing Call of Duty.
Nice.
He's a documentarian. I come from a documentary background as well. Most of my projects have all been documentaries, music videos, and I have been DP for many short films, but this is the first time me directing my first feature. And
It's extra personal.
yeah, yeah. And this is one of like, I have 5 different like stories already created, but this is the one that, if I do anything, this has to be number one. And I hate to say this, but man, if there was a studio that I would want, like if I had the option, right? And this is just like talking out of my ass at this point, but if I had the option for a studio to like produce this or finance it or give me like a release, the correct studio would be A24.
Hmm.
You know?
Going back on your word.
Yeah, yeah. It fits that. I think it's because it is a drama with supernatural elements in it,
Okay.
right?
So
Not because it's pretentious.
yeah,
It's not a pretentious movie. It's just it has these elements, and the film, it's not stylized. There's nothing like that. It's just it's I think where it would fit. It would be the right home, if you
yeah.
will, for something like that.
If you don't have the right
Um,
company that picks it up, it can really break it. Even if it's perfect, it
yeah.
can really ruin it for you.
Yeah, but I'm gonna try to do everything independent. I own a lot of equipment,
Mhm.
so my DP has a ton of equipment as well. I have friends in the industry that have already been saying, "Bro, whatever you need, I got you." Like, and this is the first time where it's like all kind of like we're all kind of coming together because we're all like, "Yeah, we can actually do something with this."
Mhm.
Like, this isn't some bullshit like passion project. No, I wanna, no, no. Like we're really gonna try to put together something that we can stand behind, feel proud of,
Mhm.
and do on our own. And we're going to squeeze it all of the juices off that first and foremost by ourselves until we have to go to somebody to say, hey, listen,
Mhm.
what do you think about maybe buying this and maybe doing some sort of limited run on it or some shit like that.
That's what I'm hoping for with mine too.
So, but it's exciting, man. I didn't know that you were a filmmaker,
Mhm.
which makes this conversation that much sweeter. I'm officially a fan, and I know just from our conversations. I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass or anything, but I know from our conversations that you, I think you have the right mindset. Like, I think that you can tell really fucked up shit without being calling you a snuff
Pulling,
director.
yeah,
I
pulling a
think I
Serbian
think you
film.
get it. Like I think I
Yeah.
genuinely think that you get where I'm coming from, and I feel like
Mhm.
you kind of sit on the same plane field. Like you know that you can do fucked up, but you also know that you can do too much of it and go, that made it cheap.
You ruined it.
Now it's a
I
B
look at
film.
you different.
No, not even that. It's just it's a B film. It's like
Mhm.
you have a movie sitting back there that is very divisive, and not for everyone, but for me.
Mhm.
I Everybody and their mothers was talking about this movie and going, "Oh my god, it's the most extreme fucking thing ever. I've never seen something so hardcore." And I'm like, "All right, I need to see this. Let's put on the sadness and let's watch." 10 minutes in, and I was like, "I'm gonna fucking hate this movie." I was like, "This is such a dumb fucking movie," and I hated that movie, bro, with a
Oh yeah.
passion. When that lady comes out of that cafeteria and she's
Mhm.
like, yeah. I'm like, oh, this is what this movie is. Special effects, dope. All right. I
Mhm.
didn't give two shits about a single character on there.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, you're just like, let's just show orgies because why not? And I get the source material. I
Yeah.
understand where it's coming from,
Yeah.
but I just did not care for it. I felt like it was such an amateur project.
Mhm.
I didn't care for it. So obviously you have to love it. It's back there.
I think it's for me it's I can't take it seriously either. Obviously they tried too hard to where it wasn't like fucked up. It's just yeah, it's bloody. For me, it's just I'm not gonna take it seriously, and I think the first 5 minutes I knew that was what was gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I took it as I'm not gonna take this movie seriously. I'm just gonna have fun with it and roll with it.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just more it's fun because it's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like yeah, the practical effects are great. characters, I could care less about them. I don't care what happens at the end. For me, it was just like it's a fun watch.
Yeah,
It doesn't it pushes some boundaries, but not to the point where I'm like, this director's a nutcase. It was just he wanted something gory, he made something gory.
for
And
sure.
I'm not gonna take it seriously. I just thought I'm gonna just have fun with it while I'm watching it.
That approach I wish I would have done. I think it's because I got so caught up in the reviews of it
Mhm.
and the fact that that movie, for some reason, a lot of mainstream people watched it
Oh yeah.
and they were the ones that were like, this is the craziest thing ever. And like, that really made me approach it on a more serious level. Had
Oh
I
yeah.
not heard a lot of like mainstream people talk about it and had it been more of like the corny over the top movie, okay, I would have probably watched it in the same, mindset
That
that you have
mindset. Yeah.
of like it's just fun and silly and let's just see how over the top it gets. Cuz like there are some
Oh yeah.
movies that I'll see that are like that crazy and I'm like this is like Terrifier.
Yeah.
You're wearing the shirt. Terrifier is a perfect example of that. Terrifier is
Mhm.
not trying to be a A24 film. It's gory. It's disgusting. I guess I don't think
Yeah.
it's disgusting personally.
Yeah.
I think it's gory. It's over the top, but it's silly. I
Yeah.
never once go, oh my god, this is horrible. Like when people talk about part two and the scene in the bedroom,
The bedroom scene.
I'm like, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And
I think Damien Leone was like, we're low budget. Let's let them know. Like we're
yeah,
gonna embrace what we are.
yeah.
He's not trying to be like, we're the edgiest, we're gonna make the most messed up. He knows what he's doing. I feel like he's like, yeah, we're a low budget group and we're working with what we got. So we're gonna make the best of it. So I think that's why I enjoy them so much.
Going back to directors and like getting a sense for like the kind of people that they are, I met Damien Leone over the weekend, was able to talk to him for a good amount of time. I also met David Howard Thornton, who plays Art, talked to him equal amount of time as Damien. They interacted with my girls. David was like just high-fiving my daughters and they were like having fun talking to him and there was nothing about them that said we're maniacs. There's nothing about them that like enjoy the way that they converse, just the way he was. I'm like, this is a guy who loves the genre and wants to have his, place in this genre. He wants to be known, but he's also somebody to like, hey, take me seriously. Like I know what this is and we've been blessed to get a bigger budget as these movies progress and we're still going to give you guys the camp. Don't worry, the camp is still going to be there, but we just got a little bit more money behind it. And you can see that. You can see the difference with somebody who like understands horror but also understands the lane that they're in. It's not like they're just like trying to do this and trying to do that for the sake of it. There are some guys that come right out the gate and are just fucking incredible and can make a super grounded horror film that like makes you go, what? Like, I mean, in most recent years, the Raka Rakas, like these guys have built their entire life up to this moment to make Talk to Me. Talk to Me is my favorite
Mhm.
movie of 2022.
So
Or
good.
right, 2022 is what came. Yeah, my favorite movie of that year. I've been a fan of theirs since the early days of their YouTube. I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
them progress. I've seen how fucked up they can be. And
Oh yeah.
when I heard that they were making a horror movie, I was like, I don't know. These guys love humor. They are fucked up. The Ronald McDonald stuff that they did. There's one in particular
Oh yeah.
where he takes that cup and puts it on beneath that kid's, and he drinks it. It is fucking dark, dude. And it's crazy that that's on YouTube, but I'm like, respect to you guys, never monetizing your channel because you guys don't want any of this stuff to be taken down. I love it. And then they come out with Talk to Me and it's this, I mean, that's a fucking movie.
Yeah, they took themselves seriously. They wanted everyone to know that they mean business. They know what they're doing and they're going to show you what they're made of. And I think they did it perfectly.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what's next for them, honestly. Guys like Damien Leone, you can't even compare him to like the director of Trauma. You can't compare him to the
No.
director of Serbian film. Then you have other extreme films like Martyrs. Martyrs is one that is an extreme film. It's hardcore.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. It's a top five. It's a top
It
five
has love
favorite.
behind it. It's
Yeah.
not let's make people sick. It's I want to tell you a really heartbreaking, a really disgusting story, but let me show you how to do it right. And I agree with Martyrs, specifically Martyrs and Inside. I think they both do it with love. I think that's why I enjoy them quite a bit. There's a lot of there's a lot of carefulness and attention to detail, and I would say love behind what they're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas again with a Serbian, to an extent, a Serbian film. Again, I think I agree with you. I think the reason why it wasn't as disturbing to me because it wasn't this gritty like garage project. It was done beautifully with great cinematography for a Serbian film. But I think they did it. I think they did it well.
Yeah. Yeah. Martyrs is, I mean, it lives rent free in my head. That movie
Hmm.
has stayed with me from day one. The beginning is terrifying.
Oh yeah,
The scenes with the girl, like you said, there is love behind it. These guys understand the genre. They have something to say. They understand violence, and I think
yeah.
that's key to
Oh yeah.
understanding violence. They don't glorify it.
No,
These movies, you can argue with me all day and say, but they're fucked up, and no, no, no. These guys don't glorify the violence. They don't dwell on it. They're showing it for that moment, and it moves the story
it
forward.
pushes forward.
There's a purpose for it, and it's what most of these amateurs miss. Like,
Oh yeah.
we'll go back to vomit, gore, piss, and all that wonderful stuff. There's nothing else but that. It's there's nothing beyond the surface. And it's not just those movies. Like, mainstream movies also do the same thing. For what it's worth, the Saw movies,
Hmm.
the studios knew that they were going to exploit violence.
Oh yeah.
No, none of those the Saw movies after part, I want to say from part 3 on, really after part 2. I'm gonna fucking
Let's go. Yeah.
lie. Like, let's be real. Part 2 was like, let's figure out shit that looks really graphic and gruesome, and let's make people really go, ugh. Whereas part 1 is another top 5. Saw, the original
It's so
Saw, is a
solid.
top 5. It's a fucking crime thriller. It's not a horror movie. It's a crime thriller with horror elements in it. It is disturbing because it felt real,
Yeah.
and there was something to say. It had something to say. Whereas all the other ones were advertised, it's not Halloween if it's not Saw. And it's like, what's the fucked up kill on this one going to be?
Hmm.
What's the fucked up kill on the next one going to be? And it just
Yeah.
becomes that. So I'm not trying to like beat down on the little independent guys who want to make shit. Like, studios know exactly just as much.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then there's some directors like Eli Roth who have all the makings to be one of the greatest in the genre, and he's so fucking infantile, so immature, that he is his own worst enemy. He's the only thing that's standing between him and greatness is himself. Hostel could have been one of the most intense movies ever made,
Oh yeah.
but you decide to add so many jokes and titties that it
You ruined it.
becomes, it's just, I get it. You love these old 80s style movies where they had the titties and they had all these
It's not
things,
done right for me
but
though
it's
with
not.
Eli.
It's gratuitous. It's
Hmm.
showing the sex because it feels perverted. There's a
Yeah.
there's a perversion behind it.
Yep.
Part 2, again, you took something that like started off pretty strong, and
So
then
good.
you
Yeah.
end it on a fucking punchline. Let's cut the chick's head off and play soccer with it.
Mhm.
And then the
It's
music.
it's like a yeah, it's like a roller coaster ride with Eli Roth. It's like I see his vision. We're getting there. I'm about
Mhm.
to love this, and then it drops. I'm like,
Yep.
you lost me, man.
Yeah. And
You
when
really lost me.
I mean, I love the guy. Like, when he did
Mhm.
Cabin Fever, my God,
Oh yeah, I
Cabin
love Cabin
Fever
Fever.
is a phenomenal film.
Hmm.
It knows exactly what it is. It has the right humor. It has the right amount of ugh and the right amount of what the fuck. It's
Hmm.
got it all. It's a great ride from beginning to end, and it never once deviated from what it set out to do.
Hmm.
So obviously, I'm excited for Hostel. Hostel disappoints. Still some great stuff in Hostel. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There's a whole part of Hostel that is an amazing movie, but then there's all the other shit. And then
Mhm.
Hostel 2, it's like, what are you fucking doing, Eli? Come on, my guy. And then he announces what I think is his magnum opus, his fucking, you know, fur release, if you will,
Yeah.
the Green Inferno. And I'm like, this dude is going for it. You've talked so much about your love for Italian horror, and you talk about,
You can't fuck this up.
like, dude, you are the guy to make this. And then I watch a straight to fucking Sci-Fi Channel movie. That's what it felt
Mhm.
like.
Yeah.
Like, really shitty quality. I'm pretty sure I've seen better acting in porn than I've seen in that movie. And it was like, I don't know what you're doing, dude, but whatever it is, just I need somebody to like tell him, hey man, like you could have done the most amazing cannibal movie ever. There hasn't been a great cannibal movie. Cannibal Holocaust, okay, all right, you can talk about that all you want, but it's dated.
It's
like
very dated.
I'm sorry. Back then, sure, you have real, killings of animals, which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
As much as I'm not about censorship, I'm like there. If you can't make it fake, then that
You don't
just
need to be doing it.
yeah, like that. That's just a whole other fucking spiel. But and I'm like, this was the guy to do it. He showed bits of it, pun intended, in the second Hostel when you got the one dude with his leg exposed,
Oh
and you
yeah.
have the Italian director himself, cutting out a piece of that thigh, and I'm like, that is
Enjoying himself.
horrifying. And I'm
Yeah.
like, he's about to make a cannibal movie? Like, oh my God.
Like we're
Um,
gonna get there, and it felt almost insulting,
it was dick
which
and
I
fart
was.
jokes.
Yeah, it was so disappointing. I remember I had such high hopes for that, and I agree with you. I can't really think. I think the only cannibal movie that I have enjoyed in recent years is one that doesn't take itself seriously because it's straight. It's like a shot on home video. It's called Cannibal Campout.
I haven't
It's
seen it.
literally shot in someone's backyard. That's the
Okay.
one I enjoy the
Yeah.
most because these big companies they try to we're gonna make something that a lot of people are. I'm pretty sure no one wants to be eaten alive by another human being.
No, no.
So it's like let's make it, and
Yeah.
they always drop the ball for me too. I'll start to enjoy a movie like again with Green Inferno. I was kind of there were some bits and pieces where I'm like okay maybe hopefully that doesn't come back like just some scenes. But then when the plane crashes, I'm like, here we go. Like
Right.
this is it. And it was like it felt like I landed on my face. I was like, this sucks. Like I'm
Yeah.
disappointed.
Yeah. Once it got to the munchies part, I'm like, oh my God, how old are we, dude? Like, what are you doing? You have all the resources to make something great. Like, how can you
How
fumble
can you
so bad?
so bad?
Fucking, oh, just pisses me off. And I think the best that he's done since freaking Cabin Fever was the house with the clocks,
Clock on its wall.
the clock, yeah, the Jack Black one.
Yeah, I never watched it. I've just been too disappointed recently that I didn't even try to pick it up.
Like that's actually a good gateway horror film for kids.
Hmm.
Like it's just that it knows what it is, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's a side of him that I never would have thought he could
Hmm.
do, and sure enough, he's doing it, and he does it very well. And then he redeems himself, and he does this trailer that any horror fan knows, for the movie Thanksgiving. And I mean, dude, like standing ovation, clapping out loud, everybody in the theaters
Oh yeah.
cheering for a movie trailer, not even a
Yeah.
full length movie, just a movie trailer, a fake trailer during the Grindhouse, back to back viewings. And 16 years pass and he finally gets to make it. And what does he do? He doesn't make the Thanksgiving movie he shows. He makes a slasher movie. Okay, I
Yeah.
will say that for a slasher movie that happens to take place during the holidays, all right, now you have a
Yeah.
Thanksgiving slasher. Sure. It's not the greatest. It's
No,
not the
it's fun.
worst.
I don't take it seriously. Again, it's
Exactly.
more if I want background noise or if I want to show
Exactly.
something with fun with my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, throw that
Yeah.
on.
It's the kind of movie you throw during a party and you got people like watching it and like, oh shit,
Mhm.
It's literally the scene in Scream where they're watching
It's
Halloween,
exactly what it is.
but
Yeah.
it's now Thanksgiving and kids are just watching it, you know, drunk off their ass watching this
Hmm.
movie. Like that's what I feel this movie is. But again, he had the opportunity to really go balls deep and he doesn't. He's almost like afraid, like almost like
It's
he's
like
afraid to fail.
he's ready to do it, and he's like, let's hold back a couple of steps.
Yeah.
Let me just push myself. Like I know he has, I know he has it in him as a director, but he falls flat almost every time. Up
He
in
had
Cabin Fever was really the last one where I was
yeah.
like, he crushed it.
Yeah. He has to go dark. I feel like he has to go full on dark and commit to it,
Yeah.
not do a big studio film. I think he has to go back to his roots
Mhm.
and just fucking go balls deep. Eli, I know you're not watching this, but if somehow you were, please just cut the bullshit, dude.
Let
Just
me see what you
makes
got.
just I know
Like,
what you can do. I
and I
think a
know
lot
he
of
can
people do.
be, yeah, he can be. I know he could be unapologetic with it, but do it in a tasteful way.
Yeah, I
Which is
agree.
again not with the extreme we're talking about. Like, and this might be another hot take, but an example of someone who doesn't care what people think about his movies. He's doing it because it's what he loves. And I love them all personally. I don't hate one of his movies is Rob Zombie.
Hmm.
Like I love his movies. Again, they're gritty, they're dark, they're disgusting. He's doing it what he wants to do. He's doing it how he wants to do it, and he's unapologetic for it. And I
Yeah,
think that's why I love them so much. He's making what he wants.
yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. He definitely is enjoying the process too. On top of it, despite
Mhm.
like what the reception may be for the movies.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Rob Zombie, I think, is the most polarizing director in the genre. Like,
Mhm.
Jesus, like the amount of like back and forth between people. No, he
Oh yeah.
sucks. Oh, it's just trash family. It's always a, trailer park trash family and all of his things. And I mean, for me personally, his greatest film that he's ever made was The Devil's Rejects. I think
Love the Devil's Rejects.
that was by far, he demonstrated that he's somebody to be taken seriously.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like he hasn't hit that mark since. I think that Halloween part one and two, the director's cut, were as close as possible to that.
Yeah.
And this might offend you. I actually prefer Rob Zombie's Halloweens over the originals. I
I love, I mean, it's the first Rob Zombie part one and the regular Halloween are almost basically tied.
yeah,
Um, Especially that the second part two for Rob Zombie is it's gnarly. That the intro scene
yeah,
where the nurse is just getting
it's just brutal.
turned into mush, really.
Yeah,
It's that's the Michael Myers I was always looking to see.
yeah,
And like we saw some violent Michael Myers like in The Curse of Michael Myers, but I wanted to see a Michael Myers that would, if I saw him in real life, I would be scared shitless, and that's what he did.
yeah. And it's so funny because I remember during that time when that movie came out, both part ones and part two was always the same argument. He makes some fucking hillbilly, giant, mutated,
Mhm.
dude play Michael Myers, and it's like super violent and like gritty and all this. That's not what Halloween was about. The scary thing about The Shape was that he just was like there, but like he didn't have that presence to him like that. It was more like just the silhouette. And it was always those arguments about like how he's
Mhm.
so like visceral, right? And that was
Yeah.
the problem. And then they go and come out with fucking Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills and
And
Halloween Ends.
everyone's, I
And they're
like how violent he is.
yeah, they're the same thing. They're literally shot the way that Rob Zombie shot his.
Yeah.
The only difference is you don't have trailer park trash characters.
Yeah.
That's
That's
it.
the problem. That's always the argument is like you were saying is the trailer park trash. It's like, all
Yeah.
right, ignore that part. I get it's a big part of his movie. Think about Michael Myers. Think about Laurie Strode. Think about
Hmm.
I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. The actor who plays as Michael's a therapist or doctor in Rob
Oh,
Zombies.
Loomis.
Thank you, Loomis. Like I like the character development, and again I like how in part two I see it as Michael is he's so pissed off. And again, it's like if you look at Halloween 2018 to Halloween Kills, in Halloween Kills, Michael is just angry.
Yeah.
He's pissed off that he got tricked. He's pissed that he hasn't succeeded what he's been trying to do. He's out for blood. And that's how I saw Rob Zombie's part two is if he's traveling all this way to kill one girl,
Yeah.
What's the difference? Why are you guys so off on it? It's
Yeah.
just a popular opinion to hate his movies, but even Lords of Salem, I love Lords of Salem. Every time I go out to Salem, I'm at the exterior of the apartment building. I go to all the places and take photos. Like I love his movies.
That's awesome. I still have yet to go out there, especially during the month of October, which I need to.
Gorgeous.
I have to. It's just it's hard when you got little ones and
Yeah.
the fam because everybody's coming and it's like, all right, this is gonna be an expensive trip. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, you're not wrong. It is popular to hate on him, and regardless of your feelings, like the guy clearly made an impact with the Halloween movies because these new this new set of films just took a page from that.
Oh yeah.
They really did. So when it comes to psychological impact with these movies, obviously, we're exposed constantly to violence, a lot of violence. Some of it is extreme.
Oh yeah.
People argue that watching extreme horror can desensitize or negatively impact a viewer's mental health.
Mhm.
So what's your take on this? Have you experienced any psychological effects after watching a film that pushed your limits?
No. I mean there are like all with I have been desensitized, I feel like in some sense when it comes to just the movie aspect. Frontiers. Frontiers. I remember hearing a lot about Frontiers and High Tension as well, where I was like, all right, it's gonna be gnarly. And I remember watching, I was like, yeah, this is pretty messed up. But then I remember watching something a little bit more graphic and going back to Frontiers and being like, it's not bad. I feel like maybe there is some sort of me being desensitized by certain aspects. Obviously, though, with just the movie aspect. When it comes to my mental health or negatively impacting me in any way, like emotionally or mentally, no. I mean, I'll turn like if I'm having a really bad day or if I'm having a bad mental health day, I go to gross and bloody movies because it's like a sense of comfort at this point, especially growing up watching, 24 years of movies, specifically horror, where I'm at this point where I will come home and if I have a really bad day, I'll put on a movie, like a scary movie. And it can be something simple. It can go something from light, like Paranorman, something intro, to something bleak, like martyrs like we talk about. Like it just depends on where I'm feeling. It's a sense of comfort in a way because it's familiar, it's where I feel like I can breathe, I can relax, I can feel like myself when I'm watching it. So I don't think it's negatively impacted me. If anything, it's helped me in a lot of situations growing up. I mean, especially I grew up in a lot of, you know decently bad situations here and there. I've been sober for almost 6 years, and that whole time getting sober, I was watching horror movies. It helped me, keep my brain and my head on straight. It helped me, focus on what was important, and it's always I think it helps, like, could be worse. I could getting my head punched off by Jason, or I could have be having my body cut in half by Leatherface, as, like, a joke, so it's like, I think they've not even in the slightest negatively impacted me. If anything, they've helped me. They've helped me feel okay at times. They help me sometimes understand situations, let my brain kind of shut off for a little bit, give myself that little break that I'm looking for.
Do you believe that there's a limit to what should be shown on screen?
I'm with you on the sister situations. I don't think you should censor. I don't believe in censorship, but I feel like directors also need to learn a limit. Where we talked about like because I own the August Underground trilogy. I've
Hmm.
seen them all, and if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's like example. Obviously the trilogy is gross. But there is I think it's the second one, the last 5 minutes with the child in the bathtub scene.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you don't need that. Or have you seen Charlotte's Net yet?
No, that's one that I have not, and I
Okay.
remember you made a post about that one.
Yeah,
I
it's
I, I
the
went
one
to
that
seek it
blew up
out,
my
but
page. Yeah. So
yeah,
I actually, with what I'm about to say, it might sound contradicting, but I actually became friends with the director, and it was for him. It was the Australian government censors almost everything when it comes to
yeah,
movies, but with Facebook, I've seen kids getting blown up in real life. Like it
hmm
doesn't make sense. So he took that censorship of what you can show in a movie and replaced it with real gore as like I don't agree with your system. I think the government is completely backwards on the situation. So I think that might sound contradictory, but There are some real gore scenes where I'm like, you did not need that. When it comes to the censorship, though, I feel like as the director should just know. You know, I mean, again, maybe they don't, maybe they just don't care. But I'm all about, you know, I want to see what you are made of. But obviously, again, with the real life gore, the real life cutting, the vomit, like you don't need those aspects to create a horror movie.
So where do you draw the line then between pushing boundaries and going too far?
Hmm. For me, okay, so I've been able to stomach pretty much everything, even if I don't agree with it or don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm, you know, again, scratching the surface with everything. I remember watching August Underground and being like gnarly, but now everyone's telling me it's just the surface level. So I pushed myself to see as far as I go. And I think it's the real animal deaths for me. Like Cannibal Holocaust, it's not a good movie, but what kind of irked me was, you know, the animals getting killed. Or there is an real animal death scene in Charlotte's Net where I'm like, I fast forwarded through it, I couldn't do it. For me, it's just I can't do that. Like I can stomach a lot, and again, I might not agree with a lot that I'm seeing, but I can pretty much stomach almost everything but real animal deaths. I just can't do that.
When you say that, like, there's, you know, those scenes like come into play and you're like, fuck this, like I just have to fast forward. Do you find yourself, would you say that, I guess, extreme horror has almost been a gateway to seeking out real things? Do you personally seek out stuff, like, do you go on gore sites
No,
and like
so I feel like, oh man, growing up, I mean, how old are you?
38?
Okay, 30. Okay.
So I'll tell you this before you even say anything. I grew up with rotten.com.
I was about to say rotten.com, you know, those websites.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't a lot of censorship for the internet with us
No.
growing up. I know we have a 10-year difference, but there wasn't. There wasn't, you know, any kind of parental locks. It was mayhem pretty much. So
Yeah.
I was exposed to that kind of stuff from like Rotten and what was it? What was the big one? Was it Live Leak or what was before that?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was Live Leak.
Yeah, or
Oh no, best
bestscore.com.
score,
Yeah.
bestscore.com. Yeah.
So or like Reddit 50/50 even, like
Yeah.
without wanting to see that stuff, I saw the chainsaw head video.
Oh god, dude, that's the one.
I saw, yeah, and I
That was
was,
the one that
I
changed
think,
me.
11 years old when I saw that. So
Yeah.
like
That
that,
that that video changed me.
yeah, that ruined. I think about that. I
Mhm.
saw a picture of it on Facebook the other day, and I was like, no fucking
Same.
way.
It
Hmm.
triggered me, dude.
Yeah.
I remember that day. I remember where I was. I
Hmm.
remember how I felt before, and I remember how I felt after, and I knew that
Hmm.
I was not the same person anymore.
Oh yeah, it was that
It was
specific video. But yeah, I remember just sitting there and be like, it can't get worse than that. And in my opinion, it did it. I mean, I've seen some really horrible stuff. I mean, again, growing up, not being able to censor it myself because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. You know, I've seen the cartel videos. I've seen again best score. You know, like again, like that was a popular thing too growing up. It's obviously a different, whole different world now. But it was this like we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know better. We clicked on things, realized how fucked up it was, and moved on. So for me, I don't search for that in movies. Um, if I hear about a movie that has like the real gore, like I do have a few movies with that stuff in it, like Charlotte's Net, Rare a Dead Person, Traces of Death, and Faces of Death. You know, all those. I do own them. It's mainly just for my collection though, because I am a completionist, and I am known for collecting the darker and more disgusting things. Um, so for me, it's not. I'm not buying them and watching them instantly because I'm searching for it. It's like I've seen enough of that stuff. I don't need to go looking for it. If there is a movie that entices me, where there is a somewhat of a storyline and it does show real gore, there are people like letting me know. I'll buy it. I'll sit on it for a couple of months, and if I'm feeling up to watching it, then I will. But I'm not actively looking for these, you know, disgusting real gore type movies.
when I was younger and rotten.com was a thing. It was young kids with this curiosity about like what the site had.
Hmm.
And I was young. I mean, I was maybe 13. And it was never, at that point, I wasn't watching hardcore horror movies. Like, there wasn't
Yeah.
such a thing like that. Like, you weren't exposed to anything like that. It was
Yeah.
just mainstream and what you could get at Blockbuster. Um, but there was a morbid curiosity. And I think every person in their life has that curiosity. It's just some people do seek out while others read about it.
Yeah.
There's like the people that can read like really extreme books, and that's, I mean, the only difference is you're just reading it, but your
Yeah.
mind is still creating the movie in its head. Doesn't make you better because you read it versus
Yeah.
watching it. But what's the difference of like me reading on the newspaper about a mother who got her head chopped off by her own son? Just recently happened in Arizona.
Hmm.
A 25-year-old kid beheaded his mom.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the difference of me reading that and then, coming across a video of it or something like that? Like it's people, however they read it, or that some people just avoid it altogether, but it was never a thing to like go out and seek. I wasn't like
Yeah.
sitting there, person getting hit by bus or
Yeah.
nothing like that. Now the scope of what you can access, even when you don't want to, is
It's
so
always there.
incredibly large. It's like I see it and I hate seeing stuff because it becomes like I don't know what I hate more, the fact that the video exists or the fact that there's thousands of upvotes on something
Hmm.
and then even more comments on it wasn't even that gory. I've seen better. Oh, but have you seen this? Oh, but like it's probably fake. And it's like, dude, that's a real person. And that's my fears, that like we have pushed the limits so hard that it's desensitized a lot of people. And I'm seeing threads where people, young kids, man, just turning 21, 22, talking about how they're trying to detox from it because it messed them up because
Oh
they
yeah.
consumed so much in their teens. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, and these are kids that probably don't even watch horror movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
It's just
strictly
like,
from the internet.
and it's real stuff, and everyone's like, oh, but you haven't seen Funky Town. And all. Like, dude, like, it's not a dick measuring contest,
It's
man.
not. It's not who can watch the most fucked up. You
Yeah,
know.
and that's the one thing that is like scary when it comes to like psychological impact. I don't believe that movies themselves are the reason that that happens. I think
Me
it's a
too.
whole different thing. I think that
It's a
when
whole other issue.
yeah, I think when you blame violence, real violence, because of a movie or because of a video game. I've been hearing this since I was a kid. Don't play Mortal Kombat because I'm gonna fucking uppercut someone's head off. No,
Yeah.
it's not happening. I'm not gonna throw my spear coming out of my hand and tell somebody get over here. Like that's not the case. But unfortunately, there are kids that can't separate fiction from reality, and they will enact on certain
What
things
they
that
have
they've
seen.
seen.
Yeah.
You have the Columbine shooting where these guys clearly had a look to them that was, trench coats and guns and, very Matrix and whatever else you may think. It's like there is obviously some sort of like, love or obsession for things
Oh yeah.
that have, caused somebody to do that. But I think that there's way more than just that. Like, I think there's a part of somebody that's broken.
Yeah.
Because
Oh yeah.
you get that even with people who are not even exposed to this. You get that with overly religious people who just
Hmm.
commit super heinous crimes on those that they love the most. And it's like, how does somebody that grew up on Jesus and all that do such a horrible thing? So that whole argument's out. Just I don't buy it for one bit. But I do believe that with horror films, there is, to an extent, a psychological impact if it is maybe there's an exposure to something too extreme at a very early age, because you're not giving your brain the time that it needs to develop properly.
Yeah.
You're introducing too many things that you need time before that is the case. And then there's some people that, like you and me, where we're both exposed to something at such an early age and we almost like adapted with it. It's
Hmm.
almost like it, instead of it taking over our brain and fighting over a spot in our brain for our own sanity. It kind of just resided next to,
Yeah. Yeah,
and I
exactly.
feel like it coexists. Like I, like I said, I empathize. I when I see something, whether it's in film or real life, and I come across a video, there is a part of me that just it sucks to see, and it's like I think the hardest part is like the fact, when I see something, I'm like, God, somebody can actually do that.
Yeah.
There's people out there that really can do that, and I can't comprehend that because I would never, despite how much violent stuff I've seen.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell you right now, though, the only time that I could do something extremely violent to somebody is if somebody ever hurt my children.
Yeah, but that's
In that
again,
case,
that's a different line. That's a different
I'm
crossing there.
I'm okay with the fact of going to prison for life. Give
Yeah.
me the death penalty. Like it's over. There's nothing. There's no
You're
coming
not you're
back
not
from that.
doing it because you're like, fuck it. I'm gonna
Yeah,
enable something horrific.
yeah,
It's a whole different, platform when it comes to, especially your children.
yeah,
It's not I'm just gonna hurt someone because I've seen a lot of movies or anything.
yeah. Out of your entire collection and what you've seen, what would you say is the most extreme film that you own?
So I've thought about this a lot, and I know I have an answer, but I I think before I give you the answer, I've always kind of looked and try to think about what the most extreme was, and I think there are some times where I've pushed myself a little too far and I back away, um, which is why I actually do TikTok and I talk about the disturbing stuff is to kind of educate people about the whole iceberg of disturbing and controversial and even banned, is so they don't have to push themselves to that point, and try to figure out what the most disturbing one is until it's too much, And thankfully, I haven't pushed myself to the point where I'm like I can't ever do this ever again. Um, Especially with the whole disturbing and controversial, you're gonna hear a lot of things, which if someone tells you that they've seen or own R73, which is a huge popular one in the disturbing community, call the
Mm-hmm.
cops. That it contains CP. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so when it comes to what the most disturbing thing I've seen, I don't look for like, the real gore or, the super shock value. I think of something that, I ask myself, what made me feel the most dread? What made me nauseous almost just because of how like horrific it was for me? And I think I think the number one winner will have to be Solo. I went into that knowing it was going to be super gross and disturbing. I've heard some things about it, but I was like, all right, so it can't be too bad. But for me, that movie's a minute and 57 minutes. It felt like it was a 7 hour long movie.
yeah,
Um, and it goes into a lot with these fascists kidnapping 9 children. I think it's 9 children, and for 120 days they are only subjected to the worst things a child could ever even endure, even a human being alone. But the fact that they're
mm-hmm.
children, I think that's what really got to me was like just watching these kids, you know, be sodomized and tortured and forced to eat disgusting items, and they're used as basically like toys, like chew toys.
Yeah,
The ending for me specifically, I remember finishing the movie and just thinking, won't watch that again,
yeah,
And I have it. I've watched it. I watched it years ago, and again, I bought it from a collection because I'm a completionist. I have a lot of friends that I will show them, like the disturbing and disgusting movies, only if they want to, and I give them all these warnings and what it's about. But this is the only movie where I'm like, I'm not watching it again. Like I'll show you Charlotte's Net, sure, but Salo did it for me. I remember feeling pretty disgusted for I think a week after watching it. I kind of took a break from the really gross horror movies and kind of stuck with like the basics, 80s and 70s thrillers. Because I don't know what exactly. There wasn't a specific scene for me. It was just the dread that I felt
mm-hmm.
from the first 2 minutes throughout the whole movie. It was done right, in my opinion. It wasn't like, again, it wasn't like something super extreme where he was like, I'm going to show you the most disgusting things I can because I can. It was, let me
Yeah,
show you a story. You're not going to like it, but it's going to change what you see, your outlook on certain things. I mean, it did its job. I mean, the director got assassinated because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you did something when somebody goes out of their way to take you out. I
Hmm.
mean, and like you said, it wasn't one specific scene, it was the whole movie. It just was this I was exhausted. I
Yeah,
was
you're
exhausted after
drained.
watching it.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
so drained. You don't have
And,
a lot of energy.
and I think what was worse, even in my case, I didn't know what the movie was about at all. I just knew that
Yeah,
it was like a messed up movie.
that's where I
But I
was.
went into it like going, it can't be that bad because it's an old movie. And
That's
I
kind of
already,
where I was at.
I was like, old movies don't have that impact, as
Mm.
much because they're not as clean looking or whatever the case is. And I was like, it's probably going to feel low budget, but my God, was I wrong. That
Yeah,
movie fucked me up. And like I said to you earlier in our conversation before we even started, I can't get myself to buying it. And a
no.
part of me, like, I kind of want to own it because of the fact that it did that to me. And I'm like
Like
you,
a
like
plot to you. Yeah.
yeah, I'm the same as you. Like I'm a completionist in that same sense. That one is one that I'm like, this is still a piece of history. This is a piece of
Yeah.
film that is an important piece, regardless of how disgusting the subject matter is,
Mhm.
that, it deserves to have a place in my collection because
Yeah.
as a filmmaker, there's just that part of my look on things where I'm like, yeah, it has a place for its
Yeah.
reason. So it's such a wild ride, and there's only one other movie that has made me feel that. It wasn't Serbian film. Martyrs for sure definitely made me feel some type of way, but I think that with Martyrs, there was an emotional connection that I had to it after reading what the director was going through when he made
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I went through a very dark period in my life where it led me to make a decision that essentially I shouldn't be talking to you right now. Let's put it
Mhm.
to you like
Yeah.
that. And by a miracle, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And when I read that, when I read about how the director was feeling and where his mind was at, I related to that, and I have an emotional connection to that movie that made me feel even worse about it because of knowing what's like the dread that he had making
Yeah.
it. But the only other film that made me feel like physically ill, that left me exhausted, actually I would say nauseous, might not be the most extreme, but the film's called Irreversible.
Oh, you know
Uh,
what? I was gonna put that up here because that was my other pick was
oh really?
irreversible. Yeah.
Yeah, Gaspar Noé, Irreversible.
It
Um,
is horrendous in that
I
sense.
saw that movie alone,
Oh,
which
me
I don't
too.
think helps. I
No.
don't think it helps. I think when you sit there alone, you're sitting there with your own thoughts, and it's just like, I need somebody to talk to. I
Hmm.
want somebody to like touch to know they're real and know that I'm, hey, help me out here.
Yeah.
I saw that movie. That movie disrupted all of my senses.
Oh
I
yeah.
was just, from the beginning, the imagery, the sound design on that, the purposeful sound design of the the frequency that he uses in the movie. There's an actual frequency
Mhm.
that he's placed in the score soundtrack in the background to disrupt people, to actually evoke a physical reaction
Oh yeah.
to. And it made sense. I was like, oh my God, I felt that. Like I just felt uneasy. And then of course that scene that just goes on for so
Like
long. And
15
it's
minutes.
and it's interesting that that scene goes on so long, but it when we talk about how like a scene can go on for too long and it feels amateurish, that scene went on too long and it didn't feel amateur at
Oh
all
yeah, 100%.
because it treated that for what it was, which was people are capable of doing this. There is nothing glorified here.
Oh yeah.
This is the worst thing, happening to this person. And this is what it feels. It made us confront ourselves
Oh
in
yeah.
a position where it's like, this is what that is. There was no
It wasn't like
music behind it.
fetishized. Yeah.
No, no, no.
It's
And
raw.
it's fucking vile. And I saw it when it came out originally on DVD. That's when I I did a blind buy on it because I heard so many things about this movie, and I never watched it again. And then recently, the Blu-ray came out with the two cuts,
Oh yeah.
the original and then the reversible cut, I guess if you
Yeah.
will. I have not seen the reversible cut, but I did rewatch it, and it still made me feel
It's
the way it did.
still horrible. Yeah, it's still not
Yeah,
horrible in like the sense of a bad movie. No, I that that's what I was struggling with was I like you, I watched Irreversible and Solo by myself, thinking nothing of it. I'm like, "Pff, I'm tough." I didn't expect those movies to impact me the way that it did, like
yeah,
emotionally. It just especially very specifically with Irreversible. Um, that movie, I remember finishing it. I think I cried when that one happened. Like I was going to therapy when I watched it for a similar situation, but so I felt like in a sense, not like I can relate to this person, but in a sense, I was in a certain situation where I was going to therapy, cops were involved, and I was just I was not treated right by somebody. So I think that's why these two movies have such an impact on me. Was in some sense of a way it hit home too much for me. I think that's why I've watched them. I've watched Irreversible, I think 2 times now, 3 times. Um, but that's why it stuck with me. Was it's real. It can happen to anybody. You know, this isn't some movie monster. This isn't some slasher, crazy, killer flying monsters. This is real life. This happens. This can happen to anybody. I think that's why those movies shook me to my core.
yeah. It's funny you say that made you cry. I when I finished Irreversible, I was sitting on my futon. The movie ended. The credits had finished. The DVD was on that like warning screen where it like
Yeah.
goes through like 1,000 different warnings from different countries. And I was sitting on the floor with my back against the futon. And I remember I was crying, but it wasn't like it was just my eyes were leaking.
Yeah. Your straight face.
I
That's
was
exactly
numb.
how it was. I could
I
feel the
was
tears,
yeah,
but I couldn't move. I didn't want to move.
yeah.
I
I
felt
was
like I just
so
had to
numb.
allow it. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. It
wild.
seems like
So you and I have like the same two movies that like
yeah.
fucked us up, and
I was
they're not
literally
even the
about
most extreme, if you will. But
yeah.
they are. There's just
They're
something
they're too real.
I'm thinking popped up in my head. So there is another film that did similar, but it wasn't. This one was a little bit different. This one affected me a lot. It affected me so much that I went on a website to search more about this person because it was based on a real event. And I actually there was a blog that was set up for this website for this girl who's no longer with us. But the film's called The Girl Next Door.
Hmm.
Um, that movie really fucked me up hard, and I have not seen that movie since I saw
Oh
it.
yeah.
That was a very very hard watch. I have seen things that are way more disturbing when it comes to like a gore or just
Yeah.
horrible things happening to people, but that movie just did it in such a way that it broke my heart for this person and so, the fact that she had to endure this. And I
Yeah.
think what broke me was the fact that there was people that were able to stop the situation from occurring and they didn't do anything
Constantly.
about it.
They just
um
moved on like it was not my problem kind of
yeah,
situation.
whereas Salo and Irreversible fucked me up. I think The Girl Next Door literally broke me. Broke
Yeah.
it just broke my heart, and it
Oh
just
yeah.
to this day I'm actually scared to rewatch that because when I watched that I was single. I didn't
Mhm.
have
You didn't have your
kids,
kids.
and my they're two girls. I'm telling you, it's a trip, dude.
Oh
When you
yeah.
rewatch something later in life that you see with a whole different set of eyes,
Mhm.
man, dude, I've cried and shit that like I'm like, why am I crying about
Yeah.
this? And I just now I before it's like you can put yourself in the situation of somebody, but now you're putting your most prized possession, the things that you love the most, your kids, in the position of
Yeah.
somebody like that, and you imagine them, and it's like, stop, stop,
Just
stop,
yeah,
don't
you
do this,
can't do
don't do
it.
this. Like it's fucking hard. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Girl Next Door was that was I knew about it. I've always heard about it. I knew the real story in I mean, you've heard about, I mean, that happens all the time, but like the main story about behind that movie, it's very real. You know,
Yeah.
it happened. It's documented very well. But
Yeah.
I remember seeing the movie um, at my local video store, and I was like, okay, maybe it can't be that bad. Again, on the same aspect that we've been talking about, if it's an older movie,
Yeah.
how bad can it be? So,
Yeah.
and I mean, the cover alone, I should have just known that this was going to kind of mess with me.
Yeah.
I went in on it blindly. Again, I knew the story to an extent, but yeah, that movie again, it's that it broke me because it's like this poor girl went through all of these things,
Eh,
probably a lot worse than what they can obviously show in a movie. Like
Yeah.
it broke me. I That's one I've watched I think only once as well, maybe twice to kind of refresh. Like it was it really as horrible and as dreadful as I thought? Like years down the road, and I was like, yeah, it's just as gnarly. I can't watch it.
Yeah. I've talked to my wife about this. My wife's not big on, or wasn't, I should say, she is now, but she wasn't big on movies until she met me, and let alone horror movies. And she's gotten into things because of me.
Mhm.
So I've treated it the same way that I would treat anybody, whereas like I'm not just gonna throw something fucking wild and extreme. I've kind of, there's levels to it, right? You want to
Yeah,
get them to a point where they're graduating to the next one and next one.
exactly.
And this is one that I want to show her, and I almost want to show her because I want it to be a cautionary tale of the realities of people
Oh
and
yeah.
what people are capable of doing. Whereas like a movie, like a Serbian film, is one that I'll never show her. She has seen Martyrs. She cried after Martyrs. Like she sat there. She said, I need a few minutes." She just sat in silence and cried. I made the mistake of showing my wife Inside when she was pregnant.
Oh
Not the best call.
no.
Sorry, babe. I love you. Not the best call on that one. Husband of the Year award did not go to me that year. Um,
Yeah, that's man, you're
yeah,
brave for that one.
it was for 31 Nights of Horror, and I thought, I can't. She can't be.
It
No,
can't
I
be
was
that
fucking
bad
wrong.
of a effect. No, I
No,
showed that to
if
my
I,
girlfriend, and she's not pregnant, and that was enough for her. She's
she's like, I'm
watched
never getting
Inside and
pregnant.
Martyrs. Yeah, she watched Martyrs first, and she loved Martyrs, but gnarly. And then we watched Inside, and she's like, "Don't show me any more French bullshit movies. I cannot take it." And I was like, "That's
Yeah,
fair. We're done here."
that's that's a rough one. That is a rough
Mhm.
one for sure. One thing I did want to ask before I forget, you're wearing a Terrifier shirt.
Mhm.
I noticed this a lot, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on it. When I go to cons all the time. My daughter has a vest. My 2-year-old daughter has a little vest, and it's got Michael Myers on it.
Mhm.
It's got Michael Myers patch in the back. It's got the Halloween patch in the front. It's got even a pin and a button, all Halloween. And it's this badass little vest for my 2-year-old girl. She looks like a total rock star, right? It's a fake fucking guy. He's not real.
Yeah.
I noticed within the horror community, there's a lot of people that will sport Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, Ed Gein, all the usual suspects on their shirts, and they wear them the way that you're wearing your Terrifier shirt. What are your thoughts on that?
I think those people. I think those people need some help. I think it's kind of like the whole controversial director take. They're completely missing the very thin line or the thin line or whatever kind of line between this is a movie and these guys ruined people's lives. These guys tore apart families. These guys took away children and their friends and their wives and husbands and children and all that. They should not be glorified in any way. Like I'll watch true crime, of course, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen a lot of
Yeah,
documentaries, but there's a difference between watching these true crime movies and glorifying these killers by getting them tattooed or getting their t-shirts or putting them on their jacket. Like I have this like horror punk jacket in my room, and it's covered in horror movie stuff and punk stuff and some beliefs that I have about certain politicians and stuff, and very very punk, but you're not going to see any s- praising serial killers.
yeah,
You're not going to see me being like, but they're cool. They're not cool. They're horrible people. They
yeah.
kill real. It's like they're no different than the videos that we saw that changed us.
Right.
But I just can't stand people like that. I've met people with wearing like like a Jeffrey Dahmer like funny T-shirt to them where it's like, "Oh, don't worry, I won't eat you," or some dumb shit like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
where? How do you not? I just don't understand. I can't understand people that glorify killers and make it
Yeah.
as a joke or like they're a part of a movie. I can't understand that.
I respect that, man. I really do. Before we go, I do have my talk to me hand. Got some names on here, and we're gonna throw yours in the mix.
Awesome.
And I realized too, I was telling you earlier that, I do have like different colors for different things.
Mhm.
And one of the other things that I have, I didn't just write names on it, but I've written certain quotes of lines from different movies. So I'm gonna just see if I'm gonna read you one. I want to see if you can actually guess where this is
All right.
from. It's in Latin, and it's "Libera te tutemet ex inferis."
Holy crap, that sounds so familiar. My horror card's gonna get revoked. Can you read it again?
Libera tutemet ex inferis.
Oh, it's that last part that's making me think. And it's from a movie?
Mm-hmm.
Is it from the 70s?
No,
What the hell?
I'll give you a clue.
Okay.
In the movie, they when they first hear it, they think it's one thing, but then they realize it's actually something else. And the character says, "I thought he said liberate tuteme, but it's liberate te tutemet ex inferis."
Um,
Liberate yourself from
holy
this
crap.
hell. Oh
I don't
man.
know.
Okay.
You're gonna say it, and I'm like, God damn it, I knew that.
All right. Any last second guess?
I don't think
You want
so.
nothing. Event Horizon.
God, okay. You see, I don't even own Event Horizon yet. I've seen it.
What?
So
Oh man,
it's been
dude.
like 7 or 8 years since I've watched it though, which is
Such
a
a
crime, I
classic.
know.
God. Yeah, your thing's revoked, but at least you got Charlotte's Net.
At least I got, you know what? I don't need you. I got my August Underground
Yeah,
trilogies.
there you go. You fucking scum.
Yeah, I'm a piece of
um
shit.
um yeah, mine's number 1363 of 2000. What was yours? What number?
Um, Mine is number 334 of 2000.
Oh, nice, nice.
I bought it
Um
the day it was announced.
so did I, man. I fucking got that bitch on pre-order the moment it was announced. You
Hmm.
kidding me? I have one other one here. If you don't get this one, dude,
I'll
I
just throw it in
consider
a
you,
collection.
I'm gonna consider you a friend unless you get this one wrong.
Yeah.
Live or die, make your choice.
Oh, Saw.
Yeah, okay. Jesus. Oof,
No.
that was a close one. That was a real close one. Dude, that's it, man. I mean, I think we covered everything. Your insight, absolutely incredible, man. Like,
Thank you.
you truly are a fan of the genre. So much respect. I have more respect for you now, even more than I did before. I knew I wanted to have this conversation, and I'm so glad I asked you to do this, man. You are 100% the right man for this. Yeah, dude. Anything that you want to plug in? You said you got your movie coming out. Where can people find you if you want them to
Yeah,
follow and kind of
I have.
stay up to date with that?
Yeah, if you guys if they follow my TikTok at Sinister Tims 6, I think it's still 6. I have a link tree. It shows my IMDb page, my Instagram, Letterboxd, all of that. So TikTok is the way to go. Like, everything's on there, and then I'll have updates. I know we're gonna be once the movie's officially done editing, we're gonna be booking all the theaters. We're gonna try to go to I think 11 or 12 states, and we'll be doing that. We'll also be doing like merchandise, barf bags, all the fun stuff. So all of that, I think TikTok will be the best bet.
Hell yeah, man. And if you make it out to Iowa, let me know. I
I'll do it.
will
I'll do it just for you.
let's fucking go. Guys, huge thanks to Sinister Tims for being here today. If you guys want to check out more of his stuff, check him out on TikTok. All the links will be in the description below. That's it for me. As always, happy hunting, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.